Welcome to the State Street Advisory Committee, March 18th, 2024. Hope everybody's enjoying the weather, because I am. Could I have a roll call of the Advisory Committee, please, Greta?
Chair Dave Davis.
Here.
Vice Chair Ken Saxon. Here. John Bauke.
Here.
Diane Black. Here. Hillary Blackerby. Here. Roger Durling. Here. Nadra Ehrman.
Here.
Robin Elander.
Here.
Ed Lenvik.
Present.
Peter Lewis.
Here.
Kristen Miller.
Here.
Suzanne Tejada. Kristen Sneddon.
Here.
Megan Harmon. Mike Jordan. Michael Becker. Marge Cavarelli.
Great, thank you very much. We do have a quorum, and we will then go into opening remarks. Ms. Harris, would you like to report to us, and not to embarrass you, your status today?
Sure. If I stand up, you will notice I am very much pregnant, and we'll be having a little one any day now. Hopefully not tonight. But with me, I have Timmy Bolton and Dan Gullett. Timmy's the project planner that's been working on the State Street Master Plan, and Dan is the long-range planning manager. And both of them will be stepping in while I'm temporarily out for personal matters, along with Eli Isaacson, the community development director, who will be here shortly, and he also has been very involved in the process. So. I look forward to being back soon with the committee, and just thank you for the time so far, and I'll keep you all posted.
Great, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Could I open with staff announcements, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair Davis. So I wanted to first make an announcement welcoming our new State Street Advisory Committee member, John Bauke. We're really happy to have you here, John. John is here as the Planning Commission representative. He's taken over Roxana Bonderson's place, whose PC's term ended in December of 2023. So I also want to thank Roxana for her time on the committee, and just happy to have John here today with us.
Great, welcome, John. You want to say anything?
No, just thank you. I look forward to working with all of you.
Great, John and I go back away, so I'm really pleased to be working with you again. Okay.
And then I've got a few more items, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
So just as a reminder to the community and to the committee, there are monthly interim operations reports to City Council on State Street efforts. Those are the efforts that you're seeing on the ground today. So things like the bike lane configuration that's out on the street right now, the discussion around the Granada drop-off, the discussion around the request for proposals for a shuttle that's anticipated this year, the configuration of the 1300 block in this sort of interim period. So I mention that because for anybody in the public that's interested in those specific issues, I would encourage you to reach out to City Council and participate in public comment during those meetings, so they can get your comments on the interim efforts. The other item I wanted to mention was a prior City Council item around Paseo Nuevo, and I mentioned this particular one because of its location in the master plan project area. So the Paseo Nuevo item went to City Council on March 5th. That was for a Surplus Lands Act exemption and for Council to sign off on a project agreement, which essentially was allowing the lender, AllianceBernstein, to continue to invest in the design process. And really that set the stage as a starting point and a step closer to a formal application being submitted by AllianceBernstein. And the relevance is that it's within what we right now are calling the city center. You can see it highlighted in the red portion, and just a lot of opportunities if that project comes through for further investment downtown. So more to come on that. Again, that will be going back to City Council throughout the process of that project, but just making this group aware that that is an item also happening in the city. And those are my staff announcements.
Good. You want to continue with the agenda review for tonight?
Yes. So we have a few things we're going to talk through. We'll start out with a general update on the master plan process and overall timelines. We will then have feedback to staff on the 4 guiding principles as well as the core strategies that were discussed. The feedback on the overall process of the SSAC small working groups. And just kind of how they went and discussing how we might use those again. We'll do a recap of the 3 district concepts that we've talked about before, and then a short discussion on the naming of the districts, just so that everybody can really begin to think about how we might finalize names for those districts, and we'll talk about that. And then the most of the time is going to be spent on updates to sketches and some of the graphic elements to help convey design ideas that are really based on the work efforts of SSAC to date, as well as some of the work that MIG has helped the SSAC and staff with. That will be led by a wonderful group behind me of 8 local architects that have volunteered their time, and I'll introduce them at that point as well. But they will be talking about that.
Great.
And that'll be our agenda.
Good, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of our minutes for the meeting of October 23rd, 2023. Are there any questions or comments on those minutes? Kristen?
Thank you, Chair Davis. I was in attendance, and I don't show on the members present list.
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Is there a second? Okay. There's motion, second. Roll call vote, please.
John Bauke,
Abstain.
Diane Black. Yes. Hillary Blackerby.
Aye.
Roger Durling. Aye. Nadra Erman.
Aye.
Robin Elander.
Yes.
Ed Lenvig.
Yes.
Peter Lewis.
Yes.
Kristen Miller.
Yes.
Suzanne Tejada.
Aye.
Kristen Sneddon.
Yes, and that's clear in the motion that it's with the change that my attendance is present. Thank you.
Chair Davis.
Yes.
Vice Chair Ken Saxon.
Yes. Great, motion, the minutes are approved. That
Ted,
takes us to
There's a
item...
couple of us you missed, Tess.
Excuse me?
Pardon the interruption. We do need to get one more vote. Sorry about that. Megan Harmon, could you vote on the minutes of October 23rd? Thank you.
I think me too.
Thank you.
I'll say yes too. Greta? I'll
Thank
say
you.
yes also.
Thank you very much.
Now we have approval. Thank you all. Takes us to general public comment. Tess, you want to handle that?
Yes, so we have a few general public comment speakers. Before I read out the ones that we have in the room, if you would like to make a general public comment on an item that's not on the agenda today, there's a blue slip in the back. You're welcome to fill it out and bring it on up to us. That's the same process that we will have for the agenda item. I'll start out with general public comment received prior to the hearing. So we had Bert Swanson, Ron Robertson Jr., Joshua Vukovic, Anthony Grumbine, Carl Hutterer, Molly Pearson, Sullivan Israel, 3, Aaron Ashland, 3, Mike Jordan, Don O'Brien, Gaia Meny, Ian Gamblin, Johnny Douglas, Eric Thune, Richard Yates, Tina Tikaya, Karen Rager, Leslie Hollis Lopez, Guthrie Leonard, George Gaboret, Timothy Fouch, 2, Kira Push, Hannah, Ubaldo Rodriguez, Julia Nguyen, Claire Jacobs, Gordon Blasco, Joan Livingston, Chloe Cho, John Kavanaugh, Jenna Wolf, Summer Switzer Smith, Dana Hanson, 2, Melissa Cunningham, John Sentinel, E. Moore, Tristan Miller, Molly Pearson, Monifa, and then there were 3 distributed that will be distributed after the hearing that we've received so far. There may be others that we've received after the 9 o'clock cutoff time this morning, and those so far that we have listed include Norma Rojas, Randy Wilson, and Richard Yates.
You know, I just want to take a minute just to thank the community for how much input we are getting, even between meetings. We're getting that's a really good amount of input, so thank you to the community. You can continue.
So then we have a few different public comment speakers under general public comment. The first, I'm going to list off 4 names who have asked to speak briefly in sequence related to the CEC ecological framework. So Dennis Allen to introduce, and then Tristan Miller will have 2 minutes, followed by Dennis Allen with 2 minutes, Carl Hutterer with 2 minutes, and Steve Windiger with 2 minutes. So if you'd like to come up to the podium.
Good afternoon, I'm Dennis Allen. We're going to be presenting about the ecological guidelines that have been approved by the Community Environmental Council. And we have Tristan Miller, who will speak first, and then I'll speak second. Carl Hutterer will speak third, and then Steve Windhager will speak fourth. Thank you.
Do you have their PowerPoint? There you go. Thank you.
Is there a way you could advance it? And one more. Thanks to everybody for coming to the CEC event that we had last week. We had such a good showing, and I hope you got a chance to explore this framework in detail at that event. We also have it on our website, but basically we want to make sure that the future of State Street is resilient, and that anything that we end up coming out of this meeting and this whole planning process results in a vibrant city. Next. So I'm talking about 2 of the main components of this framework, which is the 15-minute city and transportation. So the 15-minute city, essentially what we would like to see is a city where you can get any of your needs done within 15 minutes of walking or biking to anything, whether it be your groceries, going out with your friends, going to an event. It should be happening within 15 minutes. And to have this, State Street needs to be a diverse mix of businesses, housing on State Street, and services, and spaces for public gathering. Next. And importantly, State Street really needs to include transportation options other than cars. Specifically, there should be bikes allowed on State Street. It is a vital transportation corridor. And also no cars as it is today, as it is the way to build the most vibrancy. And all of the studies that have come out about bikes have shown that bikes on State Street or promenades like State Street actually increase spending at businesses, not reduce it. In addition, we want to make sure that there is good connectivity to the neighborhoods around it for bikers and walkers, as it is an equity issue that other parts of our city should be able to get easily to State Street. That's it for my section.
Next slide. Housing is definitely coming to Santa Barbara because of the state mandate. And the more of that we could have in our downtown corridor, the better it'll be for the economic vitality of our entire city. It needs to be a great mix of housing for students, for young professionals, for couples, for families of various and all sizes, and for empty nesters. And these need to be a robust mix of affordable and middle income and upper income. The more people who live downtown that don't have to have long commutes, the less congestion there will be and the better air quality. But the real opportunity we see is creating a sustainable building guidelines for the city that go beyond the building codes. It should encourage new and remodeled housing to be all electric, and that this electricity should be produced from solar panels and tied into a microgrid to be developed, because it doesn't yet exist on State Street. And this would make our energy sources more resilient for all of our housing and businesses downtown. We think that there should also be a decoupling between parking and living units. This would make those people that are living downtown that don't have cars have more affordable rents or a lower purchase price. This has not been done, but we think there should be a plan showing the movement of cooling breezes and ventilation through all the habitable rooms in any new housing. This would reduce the amount of mechanical cooling that would be required. We also think that it would be great to have a matrix showing all the materials that are used in every project, every development. And these should track the carbon of each of these materials. The embodied carbon of materials is the sum of what's used in mining or harvesting or transportation, manufacture of materials. And as these are all tallied up, you get a total carbon footprint, basically, of a new building or remodel project. And this could be shown to be a lower carbon footprint. In fact, the city might even want to require that it be below a certain level. But it's possible now to build new construction where you actually have a negative carbon footprint. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Carl Hutterer, followed by Steve Windiger.
Thank you. Next slide, please. What is the most important task the revitalization of State Street and downtown has to accomplish? It has to enable our city to survive and thrive in the era of climate change. There's nothing more important than that. If you lose that game, our city is lost. The renewal of downtown needs to meet a dual challenge to reduce our city's carbon footprint to net zero and to increase our resilience to the impacts of climate change that will continue to grow. These two challenges are tightly interrelated, and much of the response to them converges in the arena of infrastructure. Infrastructure systems need to provide more effective and more robust services while consuming fewer resources and less energy. Just to mention a few examples, district systems should be designed to help manage the twin problems, the twin threats of floods and droughts. The great expanse of roof area should be converted to solar roofs as much as possible, and all new homes should be electric and tied into mini grids. District-wide stormwater capture could help manage flooding while providing water for landscaping during the dry months. Rather than being a heat island, Rather than being a heat island, the design of streets and buildings should channel cooling ocean breezes up into the city and cool it down. Thank you.
All right, next slide. And I apologize, looks like our slides and our speakers got a little bit out of order, but we appreciate your bearing with us. I'm here to sort of close it off by saying, let's start by building really smart and use ecosystem services, those things that nature gives us for free, to be able to reduce our overall energy use and make our buildings more livable, make our community more livable. This means increasing our tree canopy in the downtown area to cool those temperatures and improve those breezes. We talked about capturing breezes coming in off the coast and making sure they can make their way into our buildings. As we think about planting more things downtown, let's reuse our wastewater, things like air conditioning condensate that we're creating on a regular basis. We create thousands and thousands of gallons a day in the summertime of air conditioning condensate that can be going to water those street trees and other benefits in downtown. The key is, if we think about this smart as a multimodal space that is perfect for people, that is perfect for communities, that is a place where we want to live and a place we want to come back to again and again, nature has a really important role to play in that area. And so we want to make sure that this incorporates that strategy as part of this. Last slide. And I just want to say that we're coming here not just as ourselves, as 4 individuals representing CEC, but we're also representing a number of other organizations that have already signed on and are supporters of this framework. I'm excited to see that many of the concepts we've already talked about here are already represented in the draft concepts that are coming out. We support that. Thank you so much for your work, and if there's anything we can do to help you out, we will stand ready. Thank you.
Thank you.
For general public comment is Philip Henius. Philip?
Followed by?
Yeah, my name is Philip Henius, and been a resident in Santa Barbara since 1974, and have watched State Street struggle pretty much all those years, except for a slight renaissance when they built Paseo Nuevo for a while. I just want to mention that I think it's time to really think out of the box. I am speaking in opposition of any cars or bicycle traffic being on State Street itself. I think it's important that bicycles have access to State Street. They've got bike lanes now since the street has been closed. It's still kind of a problem on State Street with the bike traffic, even with the designated bike lanes. But I do think it's important that people are able to access by bicycle. I think there needs to be adequate parking for bicycles, and just like there is for people that come in their cars. I really think, like I said, it's time for some out-of-the-box thinking. There's a lot of other very successful projects in the nation that do not have bicycle or car traffic going up and down the streets. Pearl Street in Boulder's a great example. 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica is another one. The downtown mall in Charlottesville's a great project. The development of Broadway Street in Eugene right now is also another great example. The federal plan in Youngstown. All are very successful, and I could go on and on about many projects that do not actually have bicycle traffic going up and down their malls or car traffic that are very successful. I don't think it's really compatible with with pedestrian traffic, and I think it's time for a big change. So I would say really try to think about ways that we can achieve the goals of CDC and all the members and players that are involved in this, and still be able to have a project where the pedestrians, it's very pedestrian friendly, but also bicycle friendly and car friendly without having the bicycles and the cars on State Street itself.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next public speaker under general public comment is Marilyn Loperfido.
You want to call the next one before they know who's coming?
That is the last one I have in the audience. If anybody is wishing to speak under general public comment, please bring your slip up in the next minute. We'll transition to online after that.
Great.
Good to go? Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marilyn Loperfido. I would like to state that I'm a 44-year member of the Santa Barbara Arts and Crafts Show. The reason I come to you today is because I'm hoping we can build a partnership between the two entities, our show and this group, and ultimately the re-envisioned State Street, which I think is an amazing, amazing program. The reason I'm speaking to you is that I think there's an assumption that as a Sunday show we are very busy, but in fact we've become more isolated and our attendance has become dramatically lessened as a result first of COVID, but now with, unfortunately, the closure of State Street, which again I think is going to be a great thing. So because we've become more isolated, I know it looks like we might be busy, but in fact we are slower than ever, and most of our business occurs between 11 and 12:30, and then the rest of the day we just kind of wait for somebody to come by. I think the vision can also be a wonderful partnership between our two entities. We have so much to add to what's now a blight in State Street in regards to the arts, the crafts, live entertainment, and bringing beauty to the city. I'd ask that maybe we envision a bustling partnership with us on Saturdays, much like the current farmers market has on Tuesdays, so that we can fill the gap that now exists, but ultimately when everything is said and done, it would be a terrible unintended consequence if we are isolated and left to ourselves and really have nothing to do. So thank you, thanks for listening, and I finally brought my contact information for a printout for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now transition to online general public comment.
Thank you. We do have 3 raised hands online. Michael Giannino, Lorian Davey, and Aaron Ashland. Michael Giannino, I'll unmute you and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. 1 moment.
and Lily in the audience. I apologize. After we do public comment online, I will come back to your slip.
Michael Giannino, you can speak now.
Okay, I just wanted to support bike riding on State Street. I'm 67 years old. I ride my bike on State Street a minimum of 5 days a week. And, you know, we hear all these complaints about the bikes being unruly and this, that, and the other. My problem with riding on State Street is that pedestrians cross the street, they don't look left, they don't look right, they just walk into the bike lane, sometimes right in front of you. So it's a two-way street as far as, you know, pedestrians and bike riders. And if everybody would be more cognizant of themselves, I don't think we'd have a problem. I also know that there's a lot of young kids on the bike paths and stuff being unruly, and that's going to happen, I think, any place. But I just want to say that, you know, I wouldn't go to State Street if I couldn't ride my bike on it. It's where I do most of my shopping. And, you know, as a bike rider, the pedestrians make it very dangerous for us too. So that's just my point of view. Thank you.
Lori and Davey, you're the next speaker. I'll unmute you and you'll have 2 minutes. Lori and Davey, go ahead and speak.
I wanted to agree with the speaker before me who opposed bikes on the pedestrian mall on State Street. And I am also a devoted bikie. But I think that there's a better solution for bikies having access to State Street. And that would be a good compromise to have class 1 bike paths installed on Anacapa and Chapala Streets so that the Anacapa Street bike lane would go one way towards the ocean, and the Chapala Street bike path would go the other way. And then they all could have access to the State Street promenade, and they could dismount their bikes and walk them if they wanted to continue along State Street. I think otherwise it's causing too many conflicts with pedestrians, as the previous speaker pointed out. And there's no reason that bikies who want to go on State Street couldn't walk their bikes along the pedestrian mall. Thank you.
We have 2 more raised hands, Aaron Ashland and Anna Marie Gott. Aaron Ashland, I'll allow you to speak, and you'll have 2 minutes. 1 moment. Aaron Ashland, go ahead.
Thank you for your time and efforts towards making what we all hope is going to be a vibrant and inclusive State Street promenade. I read somewhere that the purpose of the committee was to explore pedestrian-friendly designs for the future, but I feel that we have been handcuffed to a design that won't work by our traffic department or a traffic engineer. I believe the problem comes from what we learned at one of the very first MIG presentations about what I believe was the survey results of our residents. However, they said there were a couple of universal truths about areas like our promenade. First was that people wanted to be safe. With declining police staffing and the popularity of electric bikes and throttle bikes, both have made the entire promenade unsafe for basically anyone that isn't riding an electric bike and wearing a helmet. The second thing we learned was that people visiting a promenade want to be around other people. This makes sense to me. If you want to go have lunch on a patio and people watch, it wouldn't be much fun if there weren't any people to watch. So why do I think the current design for the promenade with bikes in the center of the design will be problematic? I love bikes. My restaurant is bicycle themed, and I think we should favor bikes over cars when possible. But we already have a very bike friendly city. We need a bunch of bike racks on every block, but we don't need to give them the middle of State Street. It is not going to create vibrance. Once a bike has gone by in a second or two, would you consider the empty bike lane to be vibrant? I wouldn't, but somehow the current design is offering that as part of the solution to making downtown vibrant. It won't work because it simply isn't true. The middle of the entire promenade will feel empty 99.9% of the time. Not good for feeling vibrant. Now consider a table in that area or a patio. What about people walking around safely without being in the fear of running over? All of these options would create more of a vibrance than a bike lane will ever. Shouldn't we offer the same feelings of safety to the visitors of the promenade as we offer to those who visit Shoreline Park? Shoreline Park has, quote, "walk your wheels," unquote, posted all over. Shouldn't people who use canes, walkers, strollers, and wheelchairs also be able to enjoy the center of State Street? If the current design with bikes and scooters racing up and down the middle of the street is so safe, then why haven't "walk your wheels" signs been removed from Shoreline Park? My main concern is, one more paragraph, sorry. My main concern is that it must be arrogance. I say this because we have an example like Boulder, Colorado, and we think we're smarter than them. But most other cities that... Okay.
We have one more raised hand. Anna Marie Gott, I'll unmute you and you'll be able to speak. One moment. Anna Marie Gott, go ahead and speak.
Good afternoon, committee members. I would just like to reiterate some of the comments that some of the previous speakers have made, which is we should not allow bicycles on State Street. We have a number of people who I have witnessed actually going down State Street, instead of single file, 4 and 5 people across. And there's supposedly, new rules out, but we also don't have anyone that is actively enforcing the new rules of how people should behave on State Street. It is, quite frankly, still dangerous. It will continue to be dangerous. And I'm just waiting until there's a lawsuit because that will happen at some point when someone is seriously injured. Pedestrians and bicycles in the same area just, do not mix well. And I really highly recommend finding a solution that allows for people to park their bikes so they can park and walk. That's what we should be doing. Thank you.
Yes, we have any other public comment?
We have no additional public. Oh, I apologize.
That's what I thought.
Thank you. We have Lily Heidger in the audience. Thank you, Lily, for your patience.
Hello. I want to speak in favor of a car-free State Street that also includes multi-mobility. Car-free spaces are so incredibly important to healthy and happy cities, and especially in such a special place like Santa Barbara. This means that it's space for kids to run, roll, and play while parents shop and exist in comfort. It's a place where people can quite literally breathe a little easier without interacting with cars and their subsequent air pollution. A healthy State Street also includes bikes. As a commuter bicyclist, I find State Street to be an oasis where I can bike without the worry of car interactions. Santa Barbara downtown is a great bike city, but I encounter cars on a daily basis, even on streets that have bike infrastructure, whether it's the possibility of being doored or people crossing into the bike lane. State Street just allows me to breathe easy and access all of the different amenities that it has to offer. It also acts as a thoroughfare to allow folks to get from places. Just the length of it in totality is a long distance for someone to travel as a pedestrian alone. I'd be much less likely to interact with State Street to the extent that I do if I weren't allowed to bike onto it, because it's my main mode of transit, and parking it and getting all the way to the funk zone or getting to the other end of it would be much more difficult. I think this is an inclusivity aspect as well that allows different abilities, people with different abilities to access the entirety of State Street and the entirety of downtown Santa Barbara and really interact with all that it has to offer. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have no additional general public comment.
Great.
Slips.
Thank you. We will close the public hearing. We will then move into our regular agenda item. Is item A, the update on Create State Master Plan process, a timeline, and we'll move then into the graphic elements. Tess, you want to take it from here?
Great, thank you. So I'm going to start us off with a quote that our chair has used before, and that's a quote from Hal Conklin, who's a former mayor And the quote is that Santa Barbara should evoke a sense of place, a sense of history, and a sense of celebration. And I am starting with that quote because I think that really encompasses what we are here to do today and over the next year as we finalize the master plan. I'm also going to just highlight a short vision statement that we have that the committee has agreed on, and that's really stemmed from a conversation that we had a while ago about what State Street and what the Create State Master Plan should include, what it is, what it feels, what it provides, what it reflects, and what it represents. And so just to sort of set the stage for all of us tonight, Create State leverages the history and experiences of downtown and State Street to sustain continued investment in the public space for decades to come. It establishes a programming focus with art, culture, and civic engagement, emphasizes economic activity and new opportunities for economic growth downtown, attracts residents and visitors alike, and is an inclusive public space geared towards all who want to experience the vibrancy and enjoyment of downtown and the State Street area. So I'm now going to go into what staff has been. Before I do that, I want to also highlight that when we talk about the Create State Master Plan area, we are talking about a project that's within the El Pueblo Viejo Landmark District. So there are many historic resources within that space. And it really there's an emphasis on the importance of design in our downtown area. And so that's something just to take through as we're having this conversation, and we'll get a little more into that in the second part of the agenda item. The other thing, just to mention, make sure we all understand this project is encompassing the public space area from Sola down to the 101 underpass, and then Chapala to Anacapa streets. And I want to emphasize that we are really focused in the Create State Master Plan on the public space. So we're looking at the 80 feet of right-of-way and how we can create this space that ultimately drives investment in private parcels as well, and is a community space first and foremost. So getting into what staff have been working on. So over the past few months, we've been drafting the master plan, and we expect to have that out. I'll show a timeline in a moment that walks through that. We've also been convening in small working groups with SSAC, State Street Advisory Committee members, to talk about some of the guiding principles and core strategies that Timmy Bolton will share with us in a moment. We've been working on technical reports with our MIG team and city staff. We have a representative from MIG that's joining us via Zoom. That's Matt Shawaker. He's their project manager for this project, so I'm happy to have him listening in and participating in this conversation as well tonight. And then we have been working on updated graphics, and that's what you'll hear from in the second part of this, really working with a group of local architects that have volunteered their time very graciously and are helping to, what I think is really bring the Santa Barbara flavor and that poetry into the design work. So this is just a quick snapshot of the table of contents, and I recognize that if you're in the back, it's probably very hard, if not illegible, to read. But just so that you get a sense for how we are envisioning laying out the master plan document and how we've already progressed in that effort. So we are starting out, the first section is really the executive summary, our plan for success. What are the high level points? If you were to pick the document up and read that section, you would know what the entire document is really proposing in a quick snapshot. The next is the introduction and context, talking about our history, the evolution of downtown, how we got to be here where we are today. And that's not just from COVID, and it really stems back from more than decades ago, from nearly a century ago. And then in the 1960s, when the first general plan for Santa Barbara in 1964 was created, there was a mention of this downtown core area and rethinking of it in a different zone, a car-free space. That continued in the redevelopment era, And there was a conversation again in the 70s, and we're bringing it back as well. So I highlight that just to emphasize that there's a lot of history to this project. This is not coming just from the last few years, but really coming from the last century. We then get into the different the different guiding principles, that we'll talk about in a moment. So focusing on people and placemaking, economic vitality, mobility, utilities, and function, and sustainable design and resiliency. And within those guiding principles, we have set strategies that the committee is working on refining, and then they'll be implementing action items. You can think of them sort of like policies on how we want to implement those specific strategies and guiding principles and really bring them onto the street and into the public space. Then we will get into all of that really sets the stage up for the design scheme and what the design looks like really as a whole, and then within the 3 different district areas that we've talked about through this project. And we'll emphasize those districts there and then have the streetscape design scheme fleshed out there. That leads into the implementation plan, or how we make it happen. And that's, there's a lot to that. There's a lot of meat there. So thinking about what types of phasing do we want to have? How do we want to identify immediate wins, short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term opportunities in the space? And then also focusing on ongoing maintenance and operations and safety. So recognizing that there needs to be a bit of a different structure for if we're going to create a space like this, how are we going to actually manage it, and what does that difference look like from what you're seeing today? So that section will talk about that. And then there will be a number of different technical reports, again, that we've been working on that really just backs up some of those key elements there. So then going into the Create State timeline that we have over the next year. So we are today, March 18th, we're discussing the overall process. We'll be talking about graphics and the PASEO system. And then over the next few months, we plan to continue to work with the State Street Advisory Committee members in working groups as we are working through specific sections of the plan to try to identify just different areas that we might need to tweak, or there might be input, and then that will come back to the full committee for all input, as well as the general public. All of those meetings would be reported out. And then we plan to have additional State Street Advisory Committee meetings like this one, but we do plan to do them one in the summertime and then again at the end of the year. So the real focus in bringing the whole group together will be discussing the draft master plan in the summer, as well as what we hope to bring forward as the final plan by the end of 2024. So when we release the draft plan to the State Street Advisory Committee, again, we anticipate that in a summer time frame, so estimating a July time frame at the moment. And then public review is anticipated for approximately 60 days after that. And so we would take the State Street Advisory Committee's feedback, incorporate it into the draft, re-release it out to the public for at least a couple months over the summertime, so August to likely October. And during that time frame, we'll have open forums and conversations. We'll be doing different public outreach components. We'll also be going to the committees and commissions within the city to talk through their comments and feedback for the State Street Advisory Committee to consider. We'll bring that all back with recommendations on the final plan, and we anticipate that by the end of the year, and are hoping to get a recommendation, a vote from the State Street Advisory Committee to then take that recommendation forward to City Council, and that will happen shortly thereafter, sometime between the end of this year and early 2025, and we hope to have an adoption at that point. So moving in, just highlighting again the small working groups. So we broke up the State Street Advisory Committee and into small working groups and asked and into these 4 different groups. So economic vitality, housing, placemaking, and mobility, utilities, and function. And walked through some of the guiding principles and strategies that we are going to talk about in a moment. to get feedback. And so one of the key things that we are wanting to hear from this first part at the end of the presentation will be if we've hit the right notes in terms of the guiding principles and strategies. We recognize that we'll still be working through the implementing actions or policies with the committee members and have been doing so through over the last couple months since we've met. But we want to make sure we're setting the foundation as we keep moving forward and reiterating that. So now I will turn it over to Timmy Bolton, who will walk us through the 4 guiding principles that we've come out so far.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Tess. So yeah, as Tess mentioned, we have the following 4 guiding principles up here that we really use as a way to frame the community vision, what we've heard from the input from the State Street Advisory Committee, and all we've heard through the community engagement process as a way to frame and implement that variance guidance, as well as what we think are the 4 foundational elements of great public space. So first and foremost, it needs to be designed for humans. There needs to be a unique place and space. So to that end, we think people and placemaking are key to downtown's ultimate success and long-term vitality. There needs to be a clear economic component to all of these things, and with State Street being a key driver both locally and regionally, ensuring and enhancing that vitality downtown economically needs to be a core element to enhance long-term. And there's also a functional component to all of this. Transportation and mobility play a critical element to the success of downtown, as well as the supportive elements that will enhance existing as well as the future activities and interactions moving forward. And then this new one we added based on the SSC small groups as well as the input we've heard from the Community Environmental Council. And that's really we need to leverage sustainability and resiliency in the long-term design. So delving into these a little deeper, so we start with these higher level guiding principles, and then with each one of these we have 2 to 3 sort of high level strategies to then guide the more detailed implementation actions to make those things happen. So within the realm of people and placemaking, foundationally it needs to be an accessible space. It needs to be designed for everyone from all ages and ability, from a young child to a retiree. It needs to incorporate universal design elements. It needs to be clean, safe, and welcoming for all. And it needs to be interesting, vibrant, and fun. We've heard the flat, flexible, and fun element throughout this process. We need to have concrete reasons for people to come downtown and experience something new, have a real focus on performances and large-scale community events. And we need to make sure it's uniquely Santa Barbara and deliberately El Pueblo Viejo. As Tess mentioned, we're in the EPV district, and one of the things that makes placemaking foundational is that unique experience. So we can leverage our unique history, our unique culture, our unique preferences, and make sure that when people come visit and live here, they have a unique experience through that. So then if we look at the implementing actions from those strategies, there's a number of things. We mentioned universal design, so that's the idea of removing barriers to make sure spaces are more accessible for all. It's actively programming State Street as a dynamic event space for all. We've talked a lot about throughout this process of having larger scale community events in the city center, perhaps. And then really making sure it's a high quality pedestrian experience, designing things in a human scale environment, making sure the facades as one walks along are interesting, and making sure it's human scale, it's safe, it's clean, there's bathrooms, those types of elements. As well as celebrating and honoring historic resources and the rich legacy we have here. And this is just a quick snapshot. We have a whole bunch more that will be coming soon, but just as a flavor of what we're talking about when we talk about guiding principles and strategies, and then the more nitty-gritty detail of how that implements. Shifting now to economic vitality. Downtown is a critical commercial corridor. State Street has a long history of being a primary retail corridor supported by all sorts of other industries, retail, shopping, commerce, everything else. And so a key strategy we think here is growing our existing businesses and cultivating new investment. So that's doing a number of things that range from expanding economic resources to enticing new investment to continue that economic generation downtown. A big one is catalyzing housing construction downtown. We've looked at it, and there's a strong desire to have a mixed-use neighborhood downtown. There's not as many housing units as we think there could and should be. There's a lot of policy direction through the housing element and other city efforts. big incentive to make housing come downtown, and is critical for economic vitality to sort of neutralize the activity levels downtown and just really provide more people in that space. And then finally, activate the city center. It's a foundational area that has such a rich history and good foundation. And there's a huge opportunity there to really focus and catalyze that area and start from a smaller concentrated node and build out from there to activate that location. So delving into the implementing actions, within the guise of expanding economic resources, there's certainly an opportunity to expand a variety of economic programs through additional government programs that could be bridge loans, could be leasing support, could be all sorts of things. There's an opportunity, we've heard, to cultivate a business-friendly city government. We can change some of the permitting processes. We can reduce permit fees and timelines. Another big one is facilitating adaptive reuse of existing structures. We heard about that earlier tonight. It's great from a sustainability standpoint, so much more efficient environmentally to reuse what we got than build something new. And then really transforming downtown into a mixed-use neighborhood with thousands of new housing units, which could be catalyzed from a variety of ways, including the redevelopment of Paseo Nuevo. Another example is really focusing the initial large-scale investments on the city center, so that central core. The idea being, in the research we've seen, a lot of places have had successful catalyzation by starting in a more consolidated effort, those initial investments, and then letting it organically grow from there. Switching now to mobility and utilities. So again, mobility and utilities provide a central function downtown. And really, we want transportation to be a supportive component to that vital neighborhood, to that vital function and event space. So critical to that is focusing on safety first and foremost. It needs to be safe for all. It needs to be well connected. We don't want downtown to be an island isolated from everything else. It needs to be connected to the waterfront, to the transit station, to our neighborhoods, to the rest of the region. And it needs to be fully accessible for those of all ages and abilities. And then it needs to be balanced out in that if we have certain areas that perhaps have less transportation options, there needs to be directly adjacent to that the supportive amounts. Or if there's some sort of restriction on automobile use during certain times or areas or locations, there needs to be a supportive function that gets folks to those areas still. And then finally, critical component is strategically increasing the utility capacity. So as we look to the future, thinking about where we can leverage, where future housing is going to be, make sure we upsize both private and public utilities, where the large-scale event spaces are going to be, making sure we have those supportive functions that if somebody comes in and wants to do an event, we already have the outlets there. We already have the space to roll in and out the stage and all the other supportive functions. So delving into some of the implementing actions we're thinking about. So that first one, designing State Street for safe, accessible, and leisurely travel. The idea there being State Street as a function, really it's not, it's not a freeway. It's folks who are going there to have something. It's safe, it's slow, experiential, and then the balance component of this that we just talked about is really then Chapala and Anacapa serve that, counterpoint of the service, the function, the utilitarian travel and access and whatnot. Emphasizing gateways. We've heard a lot about that, especially in the context of rethinking the 400 block and really emphasizing that as the key gateway to and from the waterfront, but also including gateways to and from the neighborhoods from the other access points, perhaps in a less defined feature, but making sure there's connections, gateways, people know when they're entering in this unique experiential space of State Street in our project area. Of course, we need to provide for emergency access. State law, I think we've gone through that a fair amount through this process. And then effectively managing and balancing parking. We are unique and blessed to have all of the on-street and adjacent parking resources that access off Chapala and Anacapa. So making sure those are effectively managed to encourage folks to come and stay and shop and spend time downtown and make sure the on-street and off-street is all balanced and well managed. And then finally, designing infrastructure for future needs. So that's that element about making sure we have the right capacity increases where we can. If we're ripping up the street, put some extra conduit in, those types of things. And then finally, this new one, sustainability and resiliency. So this was a subset of a previous guiding principle, but we elevated it through those discussions as we mentioned. And really the idea here is that for long-term resiliency and success, it has to be both environmentally sustainable, as well as from a management standpoint, as well as from everything else. So the first one is really focusing on making sure it's flexible, adaptable, and sustainable. So we've talked about some of those flat elements. We've talked about making sure we're prioritizing infrastructure improvements that can be used in a lot of different ways. So less fixed stuff that's obdurate, more flexible stuff that allows for the indeterminate future, and so we can adapt throughout time. And then designing using less, being efficient about the resources we have, and building partnerships for success. We have a lot of great institutions. We can definitely expand our capacity and be most successful when we leverage those. And then the implementing actions from these, first and foremost, use flexible and adaptable design. Some of these next ones you might be familiar with based on the CEC presentation, focus on some of the cooling effects, reduce urban heat island effects, focusing on permeable surfaces and a way to improve stormwater, incorporating solar technology throughout any sort of public and private infrastructure improvement, making sure we electrify everything and make sure it's as sustainable as possible, incorporating stormwater best management practices, and then making sure we're reducing water use and using recycled water and those types of things. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Tess.
Awesome, thank you, Timmy. So I'm now going to talk through the different districts, just reminding us that we have 3 core districts that we've discussed as a group, and we've, I think, come to some consensus here on these 3 areas. So, and I highlight them just to show you that the 3 areas do cover State Street, that's the line in the center, but they're also covering Anacapa and Chapala streets here. So the whole space, you can think of them almost like blocks within each area. And I bring that up because really we've talked about it a lot, but one of the things that I think we want to pose to the State Street Advisory Committee as well as the community is, what should these areas be called? And part of it is, should they be called districts or zones or neighborhoods? So we've got the Funk Zone and the Presidio neighborhood, the El Pueblo Viejo Landmark District in our community. There's different ways of going about the type of space. And then also we've had different ideas that have come through either through public comment or through a State Street Advisory Committee member or through staff or MIG. And so these are just some of the ideas up here. At the end, if the committee has comments on that, certainly happy to take them. And then really opening it up to the community. If you have feedback, we would encourage you to provide that as public comment. You're welcome to send in an email to the State Street Master Plan at santabarbaraca.gov. And we also will likely have something on our website for you to easily be able to go in and input your idea for what one of these 3 spaces could be called. So stay tuned for that. I just wanted to highlight that. The other reason I wanted to highlight the districts is because it really plays into a lot of the work that we're going to hear about in just a moment. And so to start us off with the architect group, first I wanted to highlight the work of the AIA and the 2 design charrettes that had been done both in 2017 and 2020, and all of the really amazing work that that group, also volunteers, have really spent so much time, put their heart and soul into what downtown could be. And if you haven't gone through the AIA design booklet from 2020, I highly encourage you to do so. There's a lot of great elements in there that this committee has taken and discussed and is continuing to look at. And part of the reason that I highlight that is because the group that you're going to hear from in a moment really stemmed from the AIA design charrette. So they're a group of individuals that volunteered their time then through the AIA and have come to the city as well, volunteering their time and working with city staff on this type, kind of the feel and flavor of what the design could look like. And so with this, just giving sort of a quick history, during the last State Street Advisory Committee meeting and previously, we've heard from the committee members in the community that the drawings or the design up to this stage just doesn't quite feel like our community. There's something missing, and they have had a lot of technical elements in them and a lot of great components, but there was something just that was missing visually from capturing people's attention or making them feel like this was our home, right? So part of that meant that after talking with Chair Davis and a couple other committee members, staff, and Anthony Grumbine, as the chair of the Historic Landmarks District, got together and spoke about, you know, how do we bring the Santa Barbara feel into this project and into our designs. And Anthony graciously brought a number of other architects on board as well, who had offered to join him in really helping to come up with different ideas for how we can present a lot of the elements that we've talked about over the last year plus. So you will see some ideas today that are similar to what you've seen before, but they look different, the design feels different, and part of what we are asking is if that's resonating with the community anymore. And then the group and staff will continue to develop design. So we've been meeting with this group since November. Over the last 5 months, we'll continue to do that as we work through leading up until the release of the draft plan and their ideas. So we want to hear from the community, and we want to hear from the State Street Advisory Committee on what you like or what you want to see different, what things you might want to see added, and then if there are changes or tweaks or as we go through the design development process. And so with that, before we get in, I want to quickly, Anthony will probably do this as well, but just highlight everybody over here sitting back. If you guys could all stand up just real quick, just highlighting all of your work. I'm going to turn it over to Anthony, but we've got Anthony Grumbine from Harrison Design. We've got Ching Hsu from Harrison Design, Alexis Stipa from Harrison Design, Fred Sweeney, Justin Manuel from Arcadia Studios. We have Mark Appleton and John Margolis from Appleton Partners. And again, just really glad to have them here today to present. And so I will turn it over to Anthony, and we will have a discussion after that presentation, and then take public comment at the end.
Great. All right. Thank you, Tess. All right. So again, thank you all to the team. It's been a really fantastic group, extremely talented colleagues that have donated their very valuable time, and thank you for the many months and hard work and to get us to here. As was mentioned, let's see. Oh, did we want to touch? Did you want? Sorry, Tess. Okay. Okay. Well, I'll just continue as we go here. So, as was mentioned, as Tess mentioned about the EPV, one of our group's thinking and challenges was really looking at what the work that's being done so far and really working it into Santa Barbara DNA. It needs to feel like Santa Barbara, and that was sort of our big push and where we were going with it. This is the EPV. This is the core of the city. This is it can't be much more of an important area, and so it really needs to feel fully like Santa Barbara. I also want to especially thank Fred Sweeney, who basically came out of retirement to work full-time on this project pro bono. And so he really did a huge amount of the work effort as well as we reviewed over the months. As well, final thanks to the AIA Charettes. It was mentioned before, the two work efforts, but those were thousands of hours of donated time and really a huge effort, and really gave us a great starting point and a lot of the work that has been gone into it as a foundation. So those are sort of jumping off points. So what I want to talk about first is what you're not going to see. So what this is not a specific design for what State Street should be or what the block should be at all. It's actually sort of a design strategy. So you're going to see sort of a toolkit and example blocks and example portions of State Street, but you're going to see sort of the toolkit that we're looking at that gives the means that can go forward, so that if a property owner or the city and a property owner or a combination of various individuals or groups can make a portion work, they have some tools in their belt to work on this. So this came from listening to the public, listening to the SSAC and all of these meetings, the AIA Charettes, et cetera, sort of has been combined for all those. So what I wanted to give you is a brief overview of what you're going to see, and then hand it over to my colleagues for presentation. So the first, there's going to be a section that will see three individual sections of State Street. So you're going to see the State Street types and different ways of the transportation and integration of how the paseos interact with State Street and the outdoor rooms that are created. So you're going to see 3 samples of those sizes. The next section that you're going to see is you're going to see the concepts of paseos intersecting State Street. And I think this was a very exciting idea that really helped form the space of State Street in a subtly new way, and I think is an improved way and an interesting way that only Santa Barbara can actually do because we're the ones with the paseo system. And so we have a very unique opportunity to actually make it inform our center spine and in a uniquely Santa Barbara way. And then the third portion, as MIG noted, the paseos really need help, and that's very, very clear. We did a paseo study, and there's less than 20% of all the paseos are actually really good paseos. So what happens when you have a system that doesn't actually connect you from a good paseo to a good paseo to a good paseo? No one uses it, or very, very few people use it. It's totally underutilized. So a core part of it is looking at the last section is looking at 3 different blocks as typical block cases that have the challenges that we have with our blocks. Some of them are poor paseos, some of them are non-existent that just need to be built, and some of them are really great paseos. And we looked at sort of typical examples of blocks and what might be able to be done with that. So that's it for the quick summary, and with that I'll turn it over to my colleagues here, Fred and Justin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Is that all working? Oh, okay. Familiar faces. You live in this town long enough, you get to see everybody. I just wanted to say a couple of things. One, I'm very honored that Anthony invited me to be part of this group. I'm really just your draftsman. I'm trying to make the things look pretty and draw it all. I'm actually retired from the city's oldest architectural firm, founded in 1906. The firm has done many, many buildings on State Street and elsewhere, including my late partner, Roger Phillips, who did the Granada Theater rebuild, and the Vic Theater, and the Arlington when it was last renovated, among many other things, county court, county administration building, et cetera. And I retired as one of the chief design architects for the firm. So what I've been doing for the last 250 hours counting since Christmas is I've been diving into this thing. So I'm actually drawing a 27-foot long drawing of all of the 10 blocks of State Street. It kind of repeated the 25-foot drawing I did for our team when we did the AIA. So I'm knowing it really well now, and I did a little bit more work by going down and pulling all the parcel maps. So that's interesting in itself. And then in addition, a while back, also volunteered my time to work on a 6-long block drawing of what we call Upper State from Mission to Constance to get the parkway designated. So I've got a little bit of background, and with that many hours and hand drawing all of this, you think a lot while you're doing it. So we want to go to, how do I do this, the next slide? How's that work? Where am I pushing?
It'd be the arrow to the
right there? I'll let you push. You push, yeah, that would make it better. So what we wanted to start off looking at is what happens when we start at the 400 block. That's we're Gutierrez, just as you come out of under the freeway, and you know there's a project underway. Can we go to the next slide, please? And so we came up with this idea of let's study what various gateways might look like at State and Gutierrez. What would that do? How does that entice folks to continue traveling up State, particularly from the waterfront, after you dive under the freeway? Next slide, please. So one of the things that Justin is going to talk about is the issue that was already brought up earlier this evening. State Street needs to breathe. And one of the ways you breathe is through our trees and the planting. And it's going to be very important that we think about how to do that and how do we retain some of the specimens that are there today that are still valuable. Do we transform them? Do we plant them? You know, do we do different things? And then how do we introduce this idea of Mediterranean architecture that Santa Barbara has adapted, and we can see all these beautiful photographs around the room, from the time that Santa Barbara developed as we know it today. So Justin, you want to talk a little bit about the landscaping approach?
So as we all know, Santa Barbara is not just an architectural showcase, but it's got a celebrated and time-honored and complementary landscape style to it. And as we begin to try to fully characterize what Santa Barbara landscape style is, it's a little bit difficult, but in looking at the landmarks and the most notable examples, some commonalities begin to emerge. And there's a little bit of a loose play on symmetry, but there's more so a thoughtful balance of textures and colors and shapes and sizes at a zoomed out level of trees and at massings. And so whenever we look at the broader sense of what Santa Barbara landscape looks like and with those elements considered, and we take inventory of what's actually on State Street, we can begin to, we don't want to change the good things that we already have going, and instead lean in on what's working really well, particularly in the spaces with the uses that are existing right now. And so we can kind of offer a bit of a categorization of like a typology of plant material for the different spaces and to further inform the planning progress. Next slide. Actually, I can just take that. So this begins to form a rough categorization of what those could look like. So along the bottom, it's basically 3 categories broken out primarily by canopy height, and that's really going to start to inform the sense of scale for each space. And it's not a sense of scale imposed, it's kind of already existing if you go out and walk on State Street. These are pretty common, but this is just a chance to really hone in on them and lean on them. So starting out on the middle of this more abstract map in the red area, right near De La Guerra, this is our more civic space. So it's our least intimate scale. There's a lot going on, a variety of uses. So it's gonna tend to want to be an area with a taller tree as we go on either side of it. With the blue areas, we drop down in canopy height, or at least the sense of scale for those areas gives a sense that something smaller would be more appropriate. So something in this range, and then going out from that in the yellow areas, these are areas where people are dining out. We're all dining out more. It's social spaces. It's your most intimate area, your most intimate scale areas. And so it tends to be shorter trees, closer to you, and you can get a bit more shade canopy. Lastly, this little cluster of trees, which isn't intended to be on any big, broad block or span any real long area, but it's intended to be kind of a bookend, and there's these green squares, which I'm not sure if they show up too well in the back, but as we start talking about gateways, these celebration or kind of an explosion of plant material, it's very Santa Barbara, and it also gives a way to announce those gateways. And so in looking at gateways, we can go to the 400 block.
So what we did here is we took the formal announcement that you're at the beginning of a change at State Street right when you hit Gutierrez as you come up from under the underpass. And we do that by introducing the alley of palm trees, which we're all known for. Every photograph you ever see of Santa Barbara, they got palm trees, right? Well, we don't want to march that all the way up. This is not the Champs-Élysées. This is Santa Barbara. But it allows us to do that introduction, but also the fact that because the police and fire folks need to have traffic on Haley because of the couplets, one-way couplets, and on State, that's how they have to maintain that area at the bottom of State Street. Those all have to remain in place, but then the other opportunity is to introduce the bicycles. There's bike lanes on both sides, and then try to capture as much space as we can for outdoor dining on both sides of that street. Let's go to the next slide, please. So the other idea is the marketplace. Right now we have a Tuesday farmers market, but we're hoping that if we do it right, that will morph into availability of more days during the week that other type markets could occur, including an art market. Let's go to the next slide. These are from Europe. And the important part about these slides, particularly these two here, the upper right and the bottom left, is that these are collapsible awnings, very much like the Costco tents they use today. And I spent several evenings down taping and measuring with my little tape and taking photographs of what they put up today. And then we took a look at this. One is in Nice, and I think the other one's in Paris. And we could do that. These pop into the ground. They've got a water available, electricity available. It's all infrastructure, but it's really a kind of a neat approach about how to do that. Next slide, please. So we took back and talked about what I refer to as the De La Guerra district from the Fiesta district transition. And here's where we put in an area for, and I guess I have to use the little red, where is that on the top?
The circle.
Oh, the circle. There we go. Okay. So these are those tents. So they line up on the shade side of Santa Barbara Street. And does everybody understand about how unique we are and how our state street is laid out? There's a shade side and there's a sun side. And when I was a little boy and got the chance to come on a big trip to Santa Barbara, my mother and grandmother would walk on the shade side because that's where all the best stores were, okay? So we have to think about how we do that. And so we put the market on the shade side of El Paseo, which is basically here. This is De La Guerra Street here and here that'll attach itself to De La Guerra Plaza up here. This is Stork Placita. And then here we have an emphasis. There's actually an idea of having a fountain there with water in it. Who knew? And then the 20-foot right-of-way down the center of the street. Next slide, please. Oh, there's the fountain at the top. Oops, do I do that? There we go. Okay, and then this is the what I call the Bellas de Artes district for working term. And this is showing the Art Museum, the Granada here, and then this is a convergence of traffic like it is today with one-way traffic going up State Street to Sola. Sola's on this side, and Gutierrez is down this way. And taking Anapamu and restructuring it so we do away with the parking on each side of Anapamu, and we limit the traffic, hopefully just to the MTD buses that need to use that, and then also for the circulation so that you can drop off in front of the Granada Theater. And then we widen the space that's available up here below the steps to the Art Museum so we can put in temporary 3D sculpture, artwork, permanent artwork, the trees that Justin just talked about make this arrangement here. This is that beautiful oak tree at the corner here, at the L'Aqua de Force corner. We've maintained that. And then here we stretch it out so that we have eyes on the Library Plaza. And an idea for a little stand-up coffee place or some seating, public seating that's available, furnished by the city. And then in some locations we'd have a little kiosk element for information and other activities. But that's just a quick spin at some ideas of what things might look like. And who do we go to next?
I'll take it.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's
okay.
You. Go.
So realizing the importance that paseos play as a series of links that span or potentially could span our downtown area and create such a unique sense of place that we have that almost nowhere else has. They lend themselves to be the gems that any cohesive design could really lean on to be a leading role instead of a supporting role as they are today, in which they just kind of abruptly stop at the State Street corridor. And so this slide, along with the next two slides, they begin to offer a rough relationship, or a general relationship of how the entrances or the exits, I suppose, of the paseos interact with State Street and impose themselves on State Street. These are not site-specific, and so therefore they're meant to be pulled and placed anywhere along State Street that they're applicable. So this particular example, of course, State Street runs across the page, and then two paseos interacting with it. And these two paseos, this situation would be where paseos are farther apart. And the overarching concept is that the paseo really spills out onto the corridor, taking up space, imposing itself, and each paseo would impose itself positively on the State Street corridor separately. Some of the benefits of this is that it offers itself to more gently meander this 20-foot, or any transportation lane that's where this could happen. That can meander a little bit more, and therefore give a little bit more meaning to how wide the sidewalks or the pedestrian areas are on both sides. And for the pedestrian, it offers a moment of pause and a moment of discovery as you land in these potentially more activated areas from the adjacent passive spaces. And in addition, of course, it gives a backbone for much more interesting landscape features, whether it's just a decorative historic paving that's coming through, or placement of trees around it, or landscape area, or no planting area, all of which help to inform whether it's that passive space or the activated space. And then the next example, similar to the first one, two paseos interacting with State Street. However, these are far closer together. So close, in fact, that while not lining up, the space between them becomes unified and activated collectively. They would still have an impact on the space, on the 20-foot or wider corridor that happens between them, but it really encompasses all of it in any form of design feature, whether it's paving or any landscape features. And so this would probably happen mid-block, and it gives the opportunity to really liven up the mid-block and pull from the intersections. And so the next slide, a little bit different. State Street's at the bottom. This is where we intersect with a potential, or we interact with a potential intersecting street from State Street. And so there's potentially multiple paseos, but if there's two predominant paseos that seem to want to link up in a pedestrian sense right now, but can't, potentially the same concepts would apply in which the paseo would spill out onto the sidewalk or corridor, take up more space. And if we're really trying to give prominence and priority to pedestrians, potentially squeeze in on traffic areas, possibly taking up temporary parking lanes, all in an effort to overlap these spill outs and create a narrower crosswalk, both to signify to cars that they may be more of a guest in this space and that pedestrians get a priority, as well as just making it much easier for pedestrians to traverse the paseo system instead of having to go downstate and over and across. So these three examples they begin to introduce the paseos onto State Street, and then we can dive further into what is a paseo with the next.
Hopefully I'm hooked up and you can hear. You know, I think the analogy of a stream or a river to State Street is not a bad one. What makes a river and a stream interesting are the changes that you see as you progress. Parts are calm and still, parts are ripples, parts are rapids, you've got waterfalls, you've got eddies, you have a lot of interruptions. And I think a lot of what we're talking about in terms of these ideas is perhaps the idea of interrupting what is too monotonously continuous and linear about State Street. And Justin was just talking about paseo. What is a paseo? In Spanish, it's a walk, a leisurely stroll. And here, more locally in Santa Barbara, I think it's a unique detour from State Street that takes you in, provides a little respite and change, some shade, tranquility. It's really been celebrated as part of Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara is romantic chaos within a rational city grid. It really is a city grid. But the paseos are something that interrupt that. They also allow for smaller shops, restaurants with a quieter atmosphere, courtyards, and opportunities in the end, perhaps for better housing and offices above the retail activity below. It's not a new idea. Other places across the country, in many developments that are pedestrian friendly and transit oriented, I think are using paseos or the idea of a paseo. And currently, we sort of looked at 3 different categories of paseo. We looked at the strong paseos, the ones that we thought had wonderful potential, and these are hopefully familiar to you. This is the street in Spain, which is actually an offshoot from El Paseo Viejo here and here. This is the paseo that cuts through to the courtyard at San Marcos. This is La Arcada. And there's a fair amount of activity, not sadly today in El Paseo Viejo. This picture I took, I think, about 45 years ago, and you can see what a wonderful environment this used to be, and still is. Architecturally, it's got all the ingredients there. Let's see. I'm not sure we can advance this. Can you arrow? Is that here?
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to be moving. Oh, it needs to be planted. Okay. So those were examples of what we felt were strong ideas for paseos.
I think there was a weak paseo, sorry. Just go back one. There we go.
Oh, okay. Thanks, John. We also looked at areas of potential paseos that were weak and could be strengthened. They're generally alongside parking areas. They are full sometimes of trash areas and things like that. Obviously not very appealing, very little landscape. These are not great experiences. They're dead end. They have a sort of alley feel, which is the opposite of a charming landscape paseo. Potential paseos, which we could have, were also something we looked at. A lot of these will depend on real estate opportunities, but you can see here that where in the block here we have a large parking lot. If you were to introduce 2 or 3 smaller buildings into this footprint, you could and sort of created a connection through from State Street, and you already have these other potential connections from side streets, you can create a nice little courtyard in the middle. So the opportunity to create paseos is certainly there, and may have to wait for real estate opportunities to come our way, but they're clearly here as part of it. And I'm going to let John take you through the three sections of the city that we looked at.
We also had
This is one thing. This map, in this map, the blue are sort of active paseos.
You see?
So we're not really taking full advantage. This is State Street here. The yellow represent opportunities, but they're now very weak paseos. And then if you see the red dots, these are opportunities to kind of break through and make connections and create, again, a detour from the State Street experience, which I think also feeds on and feeds life into State Street as well by giving interruptions to it.
Great. So much like Justin and Mark explained how the Paseo is an integral and intrinsic part of what makes Santa Barbara so unique, we looked at various blocks, and the goal in these block studies was to look at typical challenges and conditions and show different ways of handling it and what were the opportunities. So here's one place on a 500 block. This block, like he explained earlier, has city surface parking, which allows for strong transformation and creation of paseos, as well as an internal plaza, shown here. Wayfinding, well, these are wayfinding, a professional term for elements that help you make your way through the city. The wayfinding concept is used where paseos meet the streets to see into the middle of the block. And in this example, there's an iron lantern with a with a tile plinth base. This might vary per block with a design competition opportunity for actual wayfinding elements, so like this. Also reassures pedestrians that it's safe to go in here. So now we'll go to well, these are some more vignettes. So now we'll talk about the 900 block. This shows the need for, two potential paseos around here. This will provide two potential paseos to be actualized connecting through to State Street and to Carrillo. This could be through a retail building and creating this space here and connecting up to State Street there. But it also, as the vignettes will show, using plantings along parking lots. In the absence of a new building, there could be planting to frame your view and make it more desirable to walk there. Against a parking lot, perhaps, to hide the cars and make it more interesting. Many of these solutions can be done with minimal investment and are great small projects for the community engagement, participation, and action to keep the beautification of Santa Barbara going in a positive direction. And lastly, the 1,000 block shows ways of creating a paseo entrance onto State Street by stepping a building facade forward and opening a paseo behind the facade. So places that open up can now capture internal spaces using surface parking to add buildings, mixed-use housing, and puts parking underground. Existing parking shown repurposed as a small plaza. adding decorative features, sculptural fountains and an axis, and give artistic feel to the paseos and plazas. And showing a more formal Mediterranean architectural language that is part of El Pueblo Viejo. And with that, I want to pass it back to Anthony. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark and John. Okay, so with this, I wanted to close and make a final few notes and comments. One thing I did want to do is also thank Tom Sakula, who wasn't mentioned early on, but DMHA as well. The previous block study he and Ching did the whole series of, and also a whole bunch of the digital work and putting this whole presentation together and painting everyone's drawings and making them look similar and all that good stuff. Okay, so I wanted to thank Tess and Eli as well, and city staff who have been really doing a huge amount of effort. This is a long process. We're not used to it. It's not a normal thing that cities go through regularly. It takes a long time, especially to do a good job. So I wanted to comment on how much I'm impressed with the job that they're doing, and to keep on pushing. But I wanted to thank them, but as well, it's not actually primarily their responsibility to do this. It's actually all of our responsibility and the community's responsibility to really push forward for great design and for what we really want Santa Barbara to be, and to get the problems of today solved. Sheila Lodge reminds us that Santa Barbara is not a commonplace town. And so, as Pearl Chase, Bernard Hoffman, George Washington Smith, Luda Maria Riggs, James and Mary Osborne Craig, and so many others have shown us, it took a village of designers, philanthropists, and active citizens to really make a great place like Santa Barbara. And 100 years later, it takes a village of designers, philanthropists, and active citizens to make that great place even greater. My call to all of you is to help complete the dream started over 100 years ago. And as you see, that elevation was pre-earthquake, and the dream was active and live, and then that sketch just shows what that block could be if it had been built. This was never done. So it's a call to complete the dream, while simultaneously addressing the challenges of our day and age, including housing sustainability, as was mentioned today and talked about, and downtown revitalization in a truly Santa Barbara way. Today, we are standing on the shoulders of giants and going forward. And for the future generations, we must be the giants for them to stand on our shoulders. So with that, thank you. We appreciate you seeing the presentation, and we look forward to hearing any comments and thoughts.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Anthony and the group, I want to thank you from the SSAC standpoint. You guys continued the historic tradition of civic involvement in making this the place that it is. So thank you so much. And we want to continue working with you to actually finalize the draft plan as we go into the summer. I'm going to just let you all know that after Tess tells us where we're going right now, we are going to open up public comment again on things that you've heard today, and then we're going to come back to the SSAC for your questions and comments at that point. So Tess, if you want to do public comment, you want to fill out slips and get them up to you.
So we are going to transition to public comment right now. So if you would like to make a public comment on the presentation on agenda item A, please fill out one of the blue slips in the back and bring it on up to anybody up here, and we will make sure to get your comment. If you could do that in the next couple minutes so that we can get all public comments in and heard, that would be great. We are going to start off with public comment first in the room, and then we'll go online. Following public comment, I will then be asking for committee members' feedback. So we've heard a lot today. We would like to
You want to go over that slide?
Yes, I would. Let's pull up the discussion slide. Perfect. So what we are looking for, and we will keep this up after public comment, are a number of different, really is the SSAC's feedback on the guiding principles that you've talked about in the small groups, feedback on the small working groups. So staff really felt like they were extremely helpful in moving us forward as we're getting to a draft, so that we can keep on the schedule that I showed. And so staff would like to move forward, but I would like to hear from the SSAC as well. If you have any comments on the district naming ideas, you can share those today, or you can share those later via email or through the website. And then really focusing on feedback on the architectural drawings and design development that you just saw around the PSEOs and the plan views and the vignettes. And I have a couple questions here for you, really asking, do those drawings evoke the Santa Barbara character, or your general feedback on the design developments? And then your feedback on any sketches or ideas that you would like the team to consider as we move into the draft master plan. And so what additional ideas, if there are additional vignettes that you would like to see or additional concepts, the team will be working on a full plan view as well, but we'd like to hear that from the committee. So that's a lot. I'll leave it at that. We're going to transition to public comment right now, and then give the SSAC a minute to think about those questions, and then we'll regroup back.
At the end of public comment, I might take a 5-minute break and let people.
That sounds great.
Okay.
We'll take a 5-minute break at the end of public comment. So the first public commenter I have is Sharon Rich. And Sharon will be followed by Nicholas Storr and Sullivan Israel.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Sharon Rich. I'm president of Friends of State Street, a nonprofit dedicated to building community engagement in the State Street Master Plan. Your presentations today, all of them, truly represent the ongoing collaboration that is transforming the voices of our community into an outline for action. It is a really great step forward, and I thank you all for the hours of work that you have put into this. Almost 100 years ago, in 1925, an earthquake destroyed 85% of downtown Santa Barbara, leaving the city at a crossroads. The community united around a shared vision, and slowly but surely, a world-class destination arose from the rubble. Working together, and the rebuilding was transformative. What we know is that when Santa Barbara engages, State Street thrives. And today we're at a crossroads. What we do next matters. Friends of State Street pledges to continue engaging the community in this process. We pledge to collaborate with community stakeholders, businesses, organizations, and surrounding neighborhoods as it evolves now and into the future. And we encourage the people of Santa Barbara to show, again, that when Santa Barbara engages, State Street thrives. And if we get it right, our most famous street will be a world-class destination for the next 100 years and beyond. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Nicholas Storr, followed by Sullivan Israel.
Hello. Hi, my name is Nick. I'm with Strongtown Santa Barbara. We're a local advocacy group. We support, more housing, better transit, and car-free State Street. You might have noticed our posters that have been going up on windows of shops on State Street. 3 times now, we've been handing out posters and flyers to businesses on State Street and asking how they feel about keeping it car-free. And, the resounding answer from almost everyone has been that they love keeping it car-free. It's better foot traffic. There's no parking on State anyway, so people that are driving by can't simply stop and enter their store. Tourists too, have been going to shops and talking about how nice it is to walk around. And there's more space to just exist outside, eat outside, which is so nice given the climate that we have here. So I'm really heartened by today's presentation. I love that, we're potentially further investing in more spaces for pedestrians. And, I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to go on in the future. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sullivan Israel. You've heard my voice multiple times. It's very nice to finally be here in person. Thanks for having this on spring break. I don't know if that was on purpose or not. Anyway, so yes, I help run Strongtown Santa Barbara, and we have a few people here today, so thanks for coming and mention the poster campaign. What I want to mention today is something that happened to me yesterday. Yesterday I was in Yosemite. I know this sounds very random, but hear me out. So I get to Tunnel View, where you can see the whole valley, and I asked a couple to take a picture of me and my friend and asked them where they were from. They said Canada. I said, what were you doing? Well, it turns out they were just come from Santa Barbara, and they told me that they had planned on seeing more of Southern California, but they liked Santa Barbara so much that they could not tear themselves away. That's what they told me, and I said, well, what did you do while you were there? I said, well, we rented e-bikes, we biked along the beach, we biked up State Street, went to the Mission, and they said they absolutely loved it, and they spent 3 nights. A few hours later, I was climbing up to Yosemite Falls, and there were a group of Germans, and I don't speak German, but I heard them say Santa Barbara. So, of course, I walk up, and I found myself standing, huffing and puffing, because I'm not exactly an avid hiker, right? Overlooking a precipice with Half Dome in the distance, telling them what to do in Santa Barbara, because they were about to visit. Some of them had already visited, and I asked them what they were doing. They said, oh, well, we already downloaded the B-Cycle app. We're going to bike around. I said, that's great. And then another guy comes down the mountain. He said, are you guys talking about Santa Barbara? I'm not joking. He's from here, and he says, I love biking on State Street, whatever. So we had a whole conference about State Street, but like on a windy precipice in Yosemite. My point is, it's a very popular place. Also, obviously, I mentioned biking a couple times on purpose because they all did mention that they biked on State Street. So I think it's important. The drawings today were beautiful, but it's always important to remember how people really use the street. Beauty can, I think, enhance the uses of State Street, but can't really inform them. So it's important that we think about what the uses are and then how beautiful designs and drawings can come to life with those uses in mind. So thank you so much.
Jorge Baez.
Hello again, everybody. This is pretty amazing, isn't it? The reason I wanted to speak again is because I have been lucky enough to travel both around the country and around the world. And my sister lives in Chelsea in New York City. I've been to the Chelsea market. When the 3rd Street Promenade first opened, I was there the first month. And I remember coming back and saying, why don't we have something like this in Santa Barbara? That was a great story, by the way, those stories. So we also hear those kind of stories, which is really cool. And I did whatever, I took a right turn there. But I have been also to really high-level art, contemporary craft shows. I've been a member of those. And so you can imagine my ears perked up when I heard the marketplace area described, and what a great presentation. So the downside of this great project is the more we create State Street, the more isolated the Sunday show becomes. And I just have to remind everybody that we're already isolated, even though it seems like we're not. We actually are. Most of our visitors have found us by accident. So this is a great opportunity, I think, if we pursue that design idea, to incorporate members of the Santa Barbara Arts and Crafts Show to offset the loss of income that we already have and certainly will have. So again, I'd like to open that line of communication. And I forgot to mention, I've been an elected member of our advisory committee, which is a city committee, city level. I've been on and off for 40 years. I now serve as an alternate. So I just wanted to let you know that that's my position, and please, let's get started on this. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jorge Baez. My background is in architecture, permaculture, with a focus on sustainability and also on hospitality and experience curation. First of all, just appreciate the space and the effort on opening these forums for the people to speak up, and be grateful for the volunteers of architects and designers giving their time up. I want to reiterate the support of the CEC involvement on that. I think as the organization and the Cradle of the Earth Day in Santa Barbara, that should be a big component on that. And as also in my free time, I just like to research and just travel and look into other solutions that other places in the world have used as an approach. And given that looking to be more pedestrian on State Street, the possibility of raising the level of the sidewalk and either or incorporate or not the possibility of bicycles. But that I've seen in Europe, in the Netherlands, Canada, and some places in South America, just raising the sidewalk to the whole level, creating a big plaza that gives a big aspect of a pedestrian primordial space. And even in the intersections, which mean that the car would have to stop to then rise up and then slow their speeds to then come down and follow their paths. And that would be one of thing that pop up in my mind. Also, the possibility of using hemp as a building material, being California cannabis-based, fire-resistant, thermoacoustic insulation, and newly being legal after 2018 Farm Bill. So there's a big opportunity to showcase that material as a possibility for sustainability in this city. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to comment on one of the things I love about Santa Barbara is our bus system. I can get everywhere from downtown. I live downtown, and I take classes at UCSB. I can get out there. I can go to Goleta. I can go everywhere. I would like to see that continue to be incorporated in any kind of plan that is implemented. In that regard, I think one comment I would make is I didn't see any kind of effort to incorporate the funk zone in this plan. And I think that if we look at Santa Barbara and the appeal of Santa Barbara, the funk zone is part of that. And I would like to see what I think is missing right now is the trolley system, which we had for a while, was really very helpful to be on State Street and hop on the trolley, get from the funk zone all the way up to the Arlington. And I would like to see that reincorporated in any kind of plan that's proposed. Thank you.
Hello, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I feel a lot of positive vibes in the room, and I'd just like to point out the fact that and acknowledge the volunteer efforts that are being made by many local Santa Barbara architects. First, in the multiple State Street charrettes that we had back in 2017 and 2020 that involved many of the architect members of our local AIA, and then the current architect efforts that you guys put together over the last couple of months. I feel a little bad to point out, but feel it's important to suggest that the local architects get it. We get Santa Barbara, and you're seeing really good results from these volunteer efforts. And perhaps the city should rethink their inclination to hire out-of-town consultants who produce some material that isn't as well received in the community, and really think about how we as a community can work more closely together between city staff and local architects to figure out the planning challenges of our community, architectural visioning for the future of our community, and just see the effectiveness of what that brings to the conversation. Secondly, I'd like to just also commend the fact that we are now having a much broader discussion, which I think is also yielding a lot of positive feelings about what was discussed today. And I think that's that we're looking at properties adjacent to State Street, not just the public right-of-way, but the role that the adjacent privately owned properties play in the success of downtown. There were discussions and some slides that spoke to the economic vitality of housing construction downtown, adaptive reuse of existing buildings, inclusion of housing and mixed-use neighborhood vision for our downtown. This was absent from the earlier versions of this State Street discussion, and I think the richness that has been brought to the conversation by including considerations of how properties and zoning affects what we can do downtown is a really positive development in this conversation. Thank you.
Hi, I'd like to just say to the architects, I really liked your plan. They make Santa Barbara more beautiful and more welcoming. I also hope that we can get to the point where we make those 3 blocks level with the sidewalk, so it's more welcoming to pedestrians. And also, I hope that all of our plans make room for accessibility of people with walkers and wheelchairs. Thank you.
We do have 4 speakers with raised hands online. Lorian Davey, Lee Heller, Anna Marie Gott, Alex Graven. Davey, I'll unmute you and you'll be able to speak. 1 moment, please.
Hi, I really appreciated and enjoyed the presentation by the architects, especially about the paseos, the idea of paseos. And I still don't quite understand how they can be put in where they're not there already. But I'm very glad that they can be. I like that idea a lot. And especially the hints, I'm not sure they were saying this, but I thought they were saying that some of those parking lots could be turned into paseos and courtyards. And I think that would be just wonderful if that could be done. I don't understand how the parking could be put underground, but it seems like to some extent the existing parking garages are sometimes underutilized, and that people who use the parking lots could instead use the parking garages. So I just wanted to express my appreciation for that revelation about the paseos and the courtyards and getting rid of some of the parking lots. And also I wanted to just say about the landscaping for the design, that I hope that the use of palm trees will be minimized because they don't really offer shade. I know they're kind of iconic to Southern California, but I think it would be better to use real shade trees. Thank you.
The next speaker is Lee Heller. Lee Heller, I'll unmute you and you'll be able to speak. Go ahead, Lee.
Thank you so much, Chair Davis and members of the commission. I want to thank all of you for all the hard work you have been doing and the hard work of the team of architects that put so much time and effort into this. I agree with pretty much everything that was said. I'm a particularly strong proponent of a pedestrian and bicycle promenade, of a strong town's perspective on developing a 15-minute city, on the ecological revitalization presented under the CEC umbrella. My question is this. Hello? You muted me? Am I unmuted again? Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Didn't hear you. We heard you say your question is this, and then we did not hear the question.
Thank you for the transition. My question is this: how do we pay for it? So this, I feel like we're still at the 30,000 foot level, or we've now even jumped up to the 100,000 foot level in the conceptualization of all these new paseos of splitting buildings, of burying parking lots. It's not that I don't agree, but we have to come back to reality and think about what's affordable and what's affordable within reasonable lifetimes. And so I'm hoping that somehow from the amazing ideas that were presented today, the committee members can extract the more practical elements that we can start to imagine in a design that can be implemented at least within my lifetime, and I'm 63. So again, I approve of everything conceptually, but I think it's time for us to get past 100,000 level thinking and down into the real world where we can start to make things happen. Thank you so much.
The next two speakers are Alex Gravener and Anna Marie Gott. Alex Gravener, I'll unmute you. Go ahead and speak, Alex.
Hi. Yeah, so I think generally the direction that the committee is going is really nice. I think that one emphasis that is somewhat missing here is that this is really a downtown, and housing is probably going to be the primary focus going forward. More than just an experience that people will come and experience, State Street is a lifestyle. And so I think that having stunning views and everything is really great, but we should also pay a lot of attention to when people come down from their second, third story apartment onto the street level, what their life is going to be like. There was a picture that was shown of a fruit market in front of a building in Europe. The funny thing about that was in the background you could see, 4-story, 5-story buildings, something that we would hope to have on state, but we don't have right now. And that's where the people come, they go walk down to the fruit stand. And that is kind of the lifestyle that is part of all of this. So kind of keeping that in mind would be good. Also on the paseos, I think trying to keep practical matters in mind would be important. It's great that in the future we could rebuild some buildings with new paseos, but trying to keep in mind what is practical and doable in the near future would be great. I think there's a lot of opportunity for, say, the housing authority to redevelop parking lots into, dense housing downtown and build some of the paseos into that. We've got a lot of side streets. Generally, the nice thing about these paseos is it really makes the downtown more of a downtown area instead of just a line. There's a lot of side streets that connect to State Street that we could close and make part of the vision as well. Anyways, thank you so much.
The last speaker is Anna Marie Gott. Anna Marie Gott, you may speak.
Good evening, committee members. I'm really glad that we are paying attention to the landscape along State Street. That said, I don't want anyone to forget how important seating is. The past State Street design included benches that were strategically placed in the public right-of-way. Today, our State Street benches have been removed and there is nowhere to sit unless you are dining somewhere or you find a windowsill with a ledge. So I really don't want to see seating provided in this design only to be taken away in the future. So I hope there's a solid plan moving forward for permanent seating. Policy 3.1 of the Pedestrian Master Plan states that the city shall protect, preserve, and enhance the Paseo network. This is not happening. Not only has the Planning and the Public Works Department failed to protect some of our existing paseos, they have eliminated the possibility of expanding the paseo network by supporting developments that prevent the expansion of the paseo network. In one case, the paseo off of West Figueroa from one of the city's parking lots to Figueroa was first destroyed by the Public Works Department when they allowed an unapproved utility box to be installed in the middle of the paseo. Then the paseo was closed for private use by the Planning Department. That is just ridiculous to have happened. And if we are going to have a pedestrian master plan that states that the city shall protect, preserve, and enhance the paseo network, then someone needs to tell the Public Works and the Planning Department that they cannot install utility boxes in the middle of them or shut them out from the public's ability to actually use them. Thank you very much.
Put it back up the slide, the SSAC discussion.
Yes.
Oh, you already did. Good. You're ahead of me. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and I mean 5 minutes. I will start when we come back. For SSAC members, I want you to focus on these questions which you have there. I'm going to ask for your comments. I'm going to start by just opening it up for discussion. I'm not going to go around the room as we've done in the past. So it'll basically be upon you to raise your hand, to me recognize you, and we'll go from there. 5-minute break. We'll be back here at 6:11. Thank you. A few of my compatriots, but I'm going to open up and get going. Okay, I can't see it very brightly. I don't know what's happening up there. Timmy, can you help with that as all? There you go. Okay, I'm coming back to the committee for questions and comments, and keep your focus on what we got going on up there. Staff wants feedback on from the guiding principles, core strategies, how the small groups work, district naming ideas. I really like the idea of going out to the public. Tess, I really like going out to the public with the naming ideas and getting that input, both Newshawk, independent, and online through Create State. I like that. Feedback on the drawings that you saw. And I am going to open it up. Who wants to go first?
Before we jump in, I'm gonna have the architect group come up to the front, and I will be up as well, or on the side, so we're all here available if you have questions. Obviously, in addition to the feedback.
Got it. Michael, you're on.
All right, thank you. 2 quick ones. First on naming. I think for planning purposes, we've had names that we've been working with, and I support that. However, at the end of the day, do we need signs that tell people where they are? Hopefully it's the feel of the place that lets people know where they are rather than a sign telling them where they are. So I think the names should be for planning purposes, and whenever the plan is implemented, we don't need signs telling people where they are. They should come to their own conclusions based on what's around them. And second on, I know I stuck to it, but my boss shared a map, a census density map of population in the U.S. If you zoom to Santa Barbara, it was real interesting, and take the boundaries of El Pueblo Viejo, it's essentially the least populated part of the entire city. And I think if a healthy downtown should be the most populated part of a city. So I think, I don't know how much El Pueblo Viejo is part of that, or if it's something else that caused that to result, but I think that needs to change. And hopefully, I did hear from the architects that to respond to the needs of the city and the residents of the city, and that housing is part of it, that a healthy downtown should be the most densely populated part, not the least densely populated part. Thank you.
Who else has a comment? Kristen.
Thank you. This is incredible to me. This is it. This is home run. This is, to me, what I've been waiting for to see. This whole idea of a master plan, and from my perspective, was catalyzed from the AIA charrettes and all the important local work by our local architects who had vision. And those charrettes were beautifully done and then sat on a shelf, and then done again and then sat on a shelf. And to me, this is incorporating in some of those elements that have been waiting past these charrettes to be integrated in and to let us see how it works. And you know, especially the idea of the paseos and how to develop paseos. So with the question of where's the money going to come from, I love the idea of it being a framework. This is not something that the city is going to build paseos. This is a framework for how you would infill to allow and promote paseos and really revitalize them. So to me, congratulations. I don't know where it goes after this, but this to me was the moment where I saw what it was that I've been really hoping to see this whole time. So I'll just go through my list. Loved working in the small groups. I think it was really responsive to this committee that we all wanted to get in there and give more input and give more detail, and the small groups was a way to be able to go line by line and really get into the nitty-gritty. So I personally really appreciated those, and I thought they benefited the work that came back here. You can see it in here, that input was already being integrated in. I love the ecological framework, and also very responsive that you're already incorporating it into one of the 4 pillars and talking about how it could work. And again, you know, it might be the work of the city to adopt the ecological framework and then apply it as this is being developed. But just thank you to CEC for really highlighting those important points of that and then presenting to the public, so that then by the time you presented it here, it has already been sort of supported through the community. And it's really what we're already doing, but to really enumerate those pillars to be incorporated in, I love that. I loved seeing the meanders in the roads and the description that gives a reason for why some of the sidewalks might be widened in some place and narrowed, and it gives a little bit of whimsy and sort of differentiation through. And again, I understand we're not adopting a plan today, but I'm just highlighting the elements that I really enjoyed seeing. I loved the vignettes for ideas of what could be here or there. Not it's not set, this will be this paseo with lampposts, but this is an idea of how a paseo could be celebrated. It was just that little image in there for just a minute, but I loved seeing in the midline of the street, the trolley. I would love to see a railed trolley that goes all the way up and down, back and forth. And it was just in one of the drawings there, and I really want to grab onto that. Let's see. I really, really love the concept of establishing the framework or the guide plan for what could happen. And, you know, we've been so focused on State Street, that it was really kind of opening up a relief to be able to look at how it integrates in. And, you know, long before this master plan started, it was, you know, Anthony always talking about, well, how are you going to integrate in Library Plaza, De La Guerra Plaza? And there were those little hints of that in the concept drawings, and I could really see it for the first time of not just patchwork, but how these could be integrated together. So I really appreciated seeing De La Guerra Plaza and Library Plaza. Things I would like to see more is more trees, more canopy, more passive seating options. It's one of the things that I think we need more, is not just seating where you're paying to be in an establishment, but more of like a park environment, that there's passive seating where you could go and not necessarily be shopping or spending money. Even though I understand the economic vitality aspect of it, I think it's also all of our downtown and backyard. So that idea of a mosaic that was mentioned of paseos, green spaces, and passageways. I would like to see ideas for celebrating our local Chumash culture and history. we talk a lot about El Pueblo Viejo and the Mediterranean and the landscaping, and one very specific, but I think it would really be a great opportunity to really incorporate that in. We're doing that in De La Guerra Plaza, and I think we can't keep going with the master plan without really thoughtfully, intentionally incorporating that in. I would like to see at least one purely pedestrian block. Maybe it's the 700 block, but just even what it would look like. So all of the drawings we had did have a roadway through the middle, but I just think it would be great to visually see what that might look like. I'd like to see an integrated bus plan, trolley plan, all the way from the waterfront, Amtrak station, and in. So maybe a trolley doesn't go all the way, and I won't say what I think it should be or not be, but we've talked around the edges of it, of having that integrated in, and we've had public speakers before talking about how you need to be able to get to the Amtrak station or the waterfront. I'm just assuming that we as a city are prioritizing housing downtown. It's been a huge part of our housing element, a huge part of discussion. So I think it's inherent in this planning that we're going to have and are really prioritizing and incentivizing housing downtown. But then how do we make it so that it's welcoming and the framework and the utilities and all of that is set up to accept that hopefully thousands of new units downtown. And so really love the landscaping, the market concept of the marketplaces and the umbrellas, and really just the livability of downtown, and just well done. That would be my feedback. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Next. Somebody raise their hand over here. Hillary.
Staff and all the volunteers who did all this work. I'm going to jump around on these. One, I love the characterization of the paseos. I think it's kind of the most interesting and special and unique thing about our downtown, that we have porous blocks. And so making those even more welcoming and inviting and interesting, I think is doable. And especially if you think about, what's it going to cost? How are you going to do it? It's like, you don't have to do them all in the same year at the same time. Even just a few at a time can really enhance different parts of downtown. As far as the names go, I'm not super tied to any of them, other than like Arts District makes more sense. Cultural, like that doesn't actually mean anything with regards to place, I would say. So Arts District makes sense. City or civic. I would just say whatever you do, I think they should translate well into Spanish, and make sense the same way. Obviously, if you call one Old Town, the whole place is already called El Pueblo Viejo. So that sort of makes sense to me. So that's that piece. One thing I want to mention is, this is sort of an announcement in the sense that it's been brought up at public comment, and other people have brought it up, just so you know. Starting May 31st of this year, MTD is bringing back in a temporary fashion, in a very reduced level of service, a downtown waterfront shuttle circulator that'll go up Chapala, over at Sola, down Anacapa, and then to stay at Gutierrez, serve Amtrak station, and then head down to Cabrillo, to the harbor, and to the zoo, and then back to State, and back to Chapala. It'll be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Unfortunately, that's kind of what we have the one-time grant funding to do, but it's something. It will connect the Arts and Crafts Show again to downtown, which is great, and it'll be about every 20 minutes from 10 to 6 on those days. So look forward to that. It's a temporary thing, again, just through Labor Day, but it'll, be happening in this new context that we have downtown, since it's been several years since it ran. So looking forward to seeing what that does for the community, and what kind of partnerships can come out of that. I appreciated the small groups as well. I have to say, though, one thing that is disappointing and sort of worrisome is that what we were given in the mobility utility group before our small group mentioned very robustly safety and Vision Zero, which is a policy of the city of Santa Barbara, not just an idea. Has to do with safety and eliminating fatalities and serious collisions throughout the city. So that was in the language, the guiding principle about that section, and now it's gone. And I know someone in our group thought it should be removed, and then it was removed, and that's just really concerning to me, because the thing that people talk about the most in this plan, in the public comment and all of that, has been safety. So e-bike panic and all those things, right? Which is well-founded. If we remove Vision Zero from our vision for this plan or any other part of the city, I think that's a huge, huge problem. So I think it has to go back in. It just really has to. Or I don't know. I just think it's a really good guiding principle. It's done a lot of great things in our city already. If you look at all the projects that are being built right now, the active transportation projects, they are all Vision Zero projects. And so that's kind of the main flaw I see with what's been brought to us today. But all the other pieces, I think, look good. Obviously, the devil's in the details, and the implementing strategies are going to be interesting and argued over and all that stuff. But I think we're starting to distill these things down into a good vision and strategies generally. So we're getting there. We're headed in the right direction, and look forward to seeing how it refines further. Thanks.
Great, thank you. There you go.
I was just confirming with Timmy. So we it may not have been in the slide today, but we do have a Vision Zero component still in that portion. So that group will, in particular, will look at that again. Anyway, we can certainly chat more, but that is something that I recognize does need to be in the plan. I think the whole team does recognize that. So I want to just assure everybody on the committee that will be in the plan.
Good. Okay. Who's next? Megan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Davis. Awesome. Thank you. I think I can be relatively brief because I'm going to echo the comments for the most part that have already been articulated. From a 50,000-foot perspective, I think this is absolutely beautiful. I mean, it is much more reflective, I think, of what a lot of us expected to see. It has that sort of visionary element. It's really beautiful. It's really exciting. It prioritizes the things, paseos, as have been mentioned by everyone, that we all love so much. So on sort of all of these questions, I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. I will say, though, I continue to have confusion, I guess is the right word, about where we are going, where this is going. And what I mean by that is there are still some really big questions about State Street. Are we going to have cars? Are we not going to have cars? What blocks are going to be involved in this plan? Are there going to be bikes or no bikes? And I do understand that this is a framework, but I don't quite understand how we can accept a framework that's predicated on some really unresolved questions. And so for me, I have very strong views on those questions, so I kind of know, for me personally, what this means. But I wonder if we all have that same vision, and I think the answer is almost certainly no. And so while I love it, and the work that's been done is, truly incredible, but I don't quite see how we get from this work to a place where we can recommend to the City Council an actual master plan that is implementable in any meaningful way. And so that continues to be my concern, and I will continue to articulate that I really believe that it is in this committee's best interest to take a vote on these questions so that we can move forward in a way that has some clarity. And, I may not get what I want out of that vote, but that's democracy, and I think if we can do that, then we can all be speaking from the same set of facts And I guess I would just say, I love this, but I don't know that my love of it is the same as Kristen's love or is the same as Hillary's. Like, we don't know the foundation from which we are expressing our excitement. So with all that said, it is awesome. It's super exciting. And I hope that we can answer some of these key questions so that we can go out and really sell this to the community in a way that's reflective of what we all anticipate the reality will actually be. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Ed?
Thank you. It's, I share some of Megan's concerns. I look at the timeline, and we only may be meeting one or two more times, and we're going to take a vote to send to City Council. I mean, I don't know.
Just let me comment on Megan's point and your point. Because Ken and I have been working with staff, right? We're going to be basically working on implementing strategies and making those decisions and coming to the small groups and doing internally discussions and votes on that, leading into our next meeting where we'll have to officially direct staff to go out to the public. So we're heading there, Ed.
Okay. My concern is that also along those same lines is there is not enough discussion with the Landmarks Commission and the Planning Commission on what's being proposed. When I look at the schedule here, I mean, we may not be going to landmarks until I don't know when. It's way out there. And Planning Commission, if you're going to remove cars from State Street, they got to deal with at some point in time with the Transportation Master Plan. If you're going to put housing downtown, there's a lot of things Planning Commission's got to do. I'm not so much concerned about the architecture, the three-dimensional architecture that landmarks will be seeing, because that will be brought to us as something happens. I am concerned with the plan that runs those 13 blocks. And we saw only 3 blocks tonight. I believe that there's probably all 13 blocks drawn someplace. So we saw 3 blocks on three screens, and we saw 20-some screens of Paseo work. And for some reason, we got it backwards. And I think that we really need to, number one, deal with mobility. Are we going to have some kind of transportation up and down State Street? That's got to be a question that's asked and answered. And the plan that we come up with is going to have the answer on it, or has to have the answer on it. And so I'm saying we really got to get to landmarks. We've got to get to Planning Commission. We need those decision makers to tell staff and the State Street Advisory Committee that, yeah, we like this or we don't like it, and here's why we don't like it. I was mentioning to Anthony during the break that we've got a plan which is bifurcated. It's broken up, and it doesn't tell us the whole story. And then we've got landscape designs for where a Paseo might come into the State Street, and they aren't integrated with the drawings that we've got. The whole thing seems to be uncoordinated, uncollected, and yet we're going to make a recommendation in December of 2024. That's not more than 6-7 months away, and 2 or 3 meetings, and we're expected to make a recommendation to City Council that they have told in public many times we're going to rely on State Street Advisory Committee's recommendations to us. It's a tough responsibility to have, but they have said they want that information from us. So we've got to find a way to get to landmarks, get to Planning Commission many times. As much as you don't like doing it, we got to get there many times and comment on this stuff. Otherwise, you're going to find that Landmarks Commission in October is going to say, well, I don't know that we can buy into this. And they have the right to do that under the charter. And we got to deal with this. A lot I like about the plan, the site plan. That's what we're talking about. When we talked about making the graphics or whatever, the project look like Santa Barbara, I think what we were talking about is the plan we see, not the buildings. The buildings are going to be taken care of, or they'll be themselves. We gotta concentrate on this plan. We gotta make sure we got the plan right, that the plan works from Sola Street all the way down to the freeway. You know, we've got a planting plan right now of palm trees that march down from Mission Street all the way to Sola or whatever. Are we abandoning that? That's not what Landmarks recommended when when State Street Advisory came to us about a month or two ago. That was not the recommendation. Yet the landscape plan we see today seems to disregard that. Yeah, there are a lot of other reasons why it could, you know, shade and whatever. We've got to work through that.
Suzanne, then I'll go to Diane. Suzanne.
This is Suzanne Tejada. I do appreciate all the work our volunteer architects have done, and it's great to have the vision and the ideas. But I do feel like we're back to where we were 2 years ago in terms of the discussion and what we're talking about, and we keep talking about the same thing again. And we're actually talking around the main topic, which is State Street. And yes, I like the broader view looking at the Paseos. The Paseo study is one implementation action of the whole plan. There's other things, if you look in the report, that need to be considered, like creating meeting spaces. Basically, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. Circulation, stormwater management, on the State Street plan itself. So in moving forward, I think that the group can continue to look at specific ways decisions need to be made about I'm just supporting what Ed was saying, that further development needs to be studied of the street itself and the plans and what we're actually looking at in terms of, is this going to be pedestrian? Is this going to have bikes? Is this going to have cars? Is this going to have a trolley or a tram? We still don't know.
Thank you. Diane.
So I want to start out positive and say I thought the 400 block treatment was really great, and I've been talking about that for a long time, and it's probably as good as we're going to get. I think the Paseo ideas were interesting, and I think the drawings were really much nicer than what we've seen in previous versions. And I think this meeting has been a lot more positive, so I really appreciate that we're coming from a positive place. I agree with Megan and others who have said, we're sort of skirting some of the major issues, and I'm not quite sure how we're going to get there. I do think that the working group setting is a good way for us to have pretty frank conversations about issues. We had one in our working group that I wouldn't have wanted to have in this room, but I think it was good to have. And I think we need more of them. We need more working group meetings. We can't just do it in one meeting and then expect that staff has absorbed everything that we said, and it's an iterative process. I also think it's iterative between the working groups, and so each of these concepts don't stand on their own, and they feed into each other, and so somehow we need to figure out how to share and comment on what other working groups are doing as well. And I'm not quite sure how that will work. Maybe it's a big meeting, but if it's a big meeting, it's got to be before the plan is drafted, and ready to go for public review. I think we really do need to get down to a block-by-block plan view. I agree with you, Ed. I think those plans are probably out there, and it would have been nice to see more of that work that's been done. And then I think, the big issue out there, and one of the issues that's really important to me and to the League of Women Voters, is housing. And, you know, it's not just magically going to happen. So we need some real strategies about how we're going to get housing and affordable housing. And I'd love to start identifying sites in the downtown core that are publicly owned that we can use for, you know, for public housing, for affordable housing. And so I think we need to take that step as well in this plan, or I don't think it's going to be complete. I don't care what the districts are named.
Yep, sorry. Robin, go ahead.
We've done a lot of good communication with the public to date, and I think that each of the elements, the closer we get, the more of that we see in this plan. And so today I was very thankful to see really how the street treatments, the sense of arrival, the placemaking, the tree scale, the meaningful, thoughtful sense of discovery can create a vibrant economic space. And I think this was really the first time that I've been able to see how the human scale of the architecture creates the vision for the future that we all have wanted to see. And I think that's been somewhat the disconnect between what we see out on the street now and the expanse of space that we're trying to navigate and fill, and how we can ultimately get there through the diverse landscaping and et cetera. So I was very, very thankful to see all of that. And I think that the small group settings have been really excellent, and particularly around the conversation around how to move towards these big ideas to implementation, and digging deeper and deeper into the short, medium, and long-term vision of how we implement all of these great ideas and what we can and can't do in the short and long term, as well as with funding, et cetera. I think what I would like to see is how the visuals and the plan really continue to and really dive deeper into how the data can inform this, because we can have big, beautiful ideas about what we want to see, but I want to know how that foot traffic is going to support the economic vitality of the downtown, and ultimately so that businesses, property owners, and investors can really understand what to expect as we are continuing with this project. Lastly, in regards to the different naming opportunities for the different spaces, we'd like to throw out El Pueblo Centro for the center area, or just El Centro to honor the same idea. Arts District is being used already, and I think the Arts District individuals who are making up that area really support that name as an ongoing working term. And I think that the Entertainment District, I would say that one, the verdict is out. We need to explore that more. I think we could really solidify a better uplifted name for that area. Thank you.
Good, thanks, Ron. Peter.
So I think this was a really good meeting, and I want to thank Anthony and the group for all their efforts. Excuse me. I must admit that I think we still, what happens when you get artistic drawings is you get inspired. But we got to get real. And part of getting real is what several people have pointed out. We have to answer some fundamental questions. Let's get those resolved. The art, I am convinced, will come readily with all the talent that is in this town and the talent that sits on our board to get to the appropriate final project and the aesthetic. To me, that is actually the easy part. The hard part is making really tough decisions on the infrastructure, any code or ordinance changes we're going to do to incentivize housing, instead of acting like we want housing and doing nothing about it. And the great thing about the current Paseo Nuevo right now is it's going to require city leaders to really get into and understand the fundamentals of why our current housing, as Michael pointed out, doesn't exist downtown. Robin and Kristen and I are involved in and some council members on trying to form a CBID. And one of the more shocking things, even to me, that does development was 5% of our structures downtown have housing. 5%, folks. It's basically we have a dead zone. So we need to get real about how do we change that. And it feels very like, well, just kind of around the surface. We actually aren't grappling with the real fundamental changes required of this committee to actually provoke changes. The Paseos are great. They're wonderful. They're romantic. But why? I mean, that idea's been around for 100 years, and there hasn't been much change in the last 100 years. Well, it's because it's hard to do. You got to get private people, public people involved. One of the ways, if you want Paseos, highly incentivized developments with Paseos. I mean, make it easy for the people to incorporate them. So this is all part of what I think we need to do. I thought the small groups were awesome because discussions were frank. And, there's nothing wrong with frankness. It's really healthy. And it makes people understand each other's positions and inform, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to get. So I thought those are great. Encourage them. And to Ed's concern, if we have a bunch of those small groups, all of a sudden, there's a lot more input, I think. And I think we could keep on that schedule if we accelerate the small groups. So I encourage that. The districts, I'm not a huge fan of these districts, to be honest. I like to think of the downtown as downtown. Entertainment, I agree, is a bad name for a district. And the reality is the arts district is just as much entertainment as the entertainment district. So, but I don't have a hang up on it. As far as the drawings, one of the things that I would like to see perhaps is, and it relates to some fundamental transportation things that we still haven't agreed to, at least in my view, is it would be really cool to see some of those drawings with, in fact, a pedestrian-only zone. See how important those drawings were to all this committee, to how it, moved them. The same would be effective on a pedestrian-only section. So this is my thought, Fred. The 700 and 800 block is the steepest sections of the street. It's also the center of this town. Let's do a little design charrette study on what that would look and feel like without the bicycles and without just making it truly pedestrian. So hang on, this is my time, not yours. Okay, thank you. So that's one I would really love to see. And I think it would be helpful for everyone to see that nice artistic form and work as a pretty radical alternative to what the city's really currently, transportation wants us to buy it off on, which is keeping the bicycle all the way down and using it as a transportation corridor. I don't think it has to be that. I think you need to get people downtown. It doesn't need to be a corridor. That's my own personal view. So that's my one request for you. But the drawings were awesome, and thank you for them. They're helpful for people. Fred?
Dave, I need, because I've been listening, I need to dive in. Please, give them the microphone, please. Just hold it up.
I need to dive in, because going to this meeting, I wanted to show you all 10 blocks with those drawings that you just said. They're done. I have them. They're finished. I did 2 versions of the center. I did the wow factor. The rail streetcar is on those drawings with a turnaround at each end. But I was told I couldn't talk about that. I don't know why, but I was told by several people you're not allowed to tell you What I should have shown you today was all 10 blocks because they're already drawn. They're drawn in 3 different versions. The 2 versions you just described, it's already drawn.
Hey, Fred, hang on.
Okay.
Okay, no, hang on.
I'm trying to hold my temper, but I
Hang
can't
on.
tell you.
Hey, hang on. You know, we did make a decision today to introduce what we're doing and basically bring those drawings into the small groups and bring them to the public in the springtime. So thank you in that regard. Michael.
I'd like to add my appreciation to that rogues gallery over there against the wall. The couple of you I know exactly who I'm talking about as rogues, but especially Anthony, not especially you're a rogue, but for volunteering and shepherding that group of architects together to help push us along out of this conundrum. I think just there will not be enough thanks for you for the work you've done, and I know what you'll continue to do. So thank you for that. I'm just going to talk about the bullets that resonate for me. I'm agnostic on the district naming areas. I hear both the chicken and the egg arguments, and I'm not confident enough to know that we have a chicken and we can produce an egg, or we need an egg to produce a chicken. So you know why I use that anecdotal story, yeah. But I don't recall anybody posterizing the funk zone before it became the funk zone, but now I can certainly go find a sign on every street pole that declares it is the funk zone too. So I like the drawings, but drawings are just drawings, and I'm not a subject matter expert on the Santa Barbara character. I leave that to others. But in particular, I like I think, at least in this room, the sudden emphasis on paseos. One of my favorite paseos is the parking lot at City Hall, through the parking lot at the building that shall remain nameless next door, through the parking lot of that other tall white building there, and then through our Lot 10 parking lot and out onto the street, and I'm 2 blocks down, and then on your drawing, you actually showed a way to get down there, but I'm looking at the little alley behind Joe's going, where's that going? How do we get through it? And then how do I eventually get all the way down behind World Market, right? And so what I'd like to see would also be an effort for you to look for places like that where maybe you might scoff and say there's no chance in hell in the future, but you never know, to Peter's point, when somebody's going to do a building and you can negotiate as part of the process to get some space. So whether that's like, did we lose an opportunity to come in off State Street and turn back down to, is that Ortega or Coda, on the restoration hardware project? I don't know, but nobody brought it up and said, hey, how do we get 15 or 20 feet in here, and we'll give you another little space of a higher elevation to make up for that lost space, but we build a new paseo where there was a building. I'm sure these places exist all over the city when you're looking at it from the top down, and you're saying, yeah, if we had here, we had there, or if you could grab some land here or there. So I'd really like to see where in the future those opportunities could be, and see those recognized now so that we know when we do see projects coming, we can get out in front of that. Same thing for buildings that are in the way. I'll just use a couple of my favorite examples, and that would be the 4 or 5 parcels on the east side of State Street against De La Guerra Plaza. And I know one's a historical building, so just give me a little latitude here. But darn if 50 years from now the city didn't find a way to take care of that, and the entire plaza went from where City Hall is all the way over to where the new Paseo Nuevo starts. My other example would be somewhere on the 800 or 900 block of State Street, where there's a third of a block taken up by a 50-foot high blank wall bank. That is not what should be today, should not be sitting on State Street as part of where we want to go in the future. And how can we incentivize those owners who are also sitting on 10,000 square feet of a bank, and to incentivize those owners to do something else with that property and bring it into what you're looking at for the future? I'd also like to see more suggestions for urban forests, particularly canopy trees built into the center of blocks, whether they're in the paseos or not. The examples I saw today were what to do lining State Street and maybe some landscaping on paseos, but I think somebody had an example of the paseo being where Grassini Winery is and the inside of El Paseo there. It's not a tree to be found in that courtyard, not a tree of significance. And why is that? I don't know. And what can we do? What can we do to incentivize that or help that along? And then Paseo Nuevo is coming whether we're ready for it or not. I mean, or it's not, but today it is. It's coming whether we're, okay, Debbie Downer, but today it's coming whether we're ready for it or not. And it's going to drastically change State Street whether we're ready or not. So I think we should be ready. I think we should be going great guns on this process and putting ourselves in position to be ready for this, to be ready for the De La Guerra Plaza project, to be ready when the underpass is done under the freeway, to be ready with whatever the heck happens with the News Press building, to sit by and look for the perfect or whatever process we have to do. I think we need to move with some alacrity towards a plan so that we at least have something to start with to be ready, because a plan is only a plan. You can always change the plan once you need to change the plan. And then last couple points, you know, this question of State Street and pedestrians, cars, and bikes. So I think you're probably going to hear it from every council member, because we're the ones who are playing defense every day, constantly. It needs to be resolved, and it needs to be resolved sooner than when we get a nice packet and it says, well, here's kind of our plan. But to go back to the best narrative I've heard you say last year, Dave, that 100 years ago, the city didn't just automatically become Santa Barbara. It took decades to do it. And I don't want to sit in this chair and continue to defend what we want to do in terms of those three shared groups. And I don't want the next person to sit in this chair as the plan is taking decades to work out and continually have to defend the choices of pedestrians, bicycles, and cars. We need to figure out what that is. And then finally, I think people, again, need to know that this is going to be a multi-decade project, and there's going to be some really tough choices to make in terms of priorities and dollar decisions. And it's certainly not going to get easier into the future. And we need to know that it doesn't just happen. I think we need to accept that it doesn't just turn out looking like a pretty picture that Fred drew on the screen. There's going to be wins, there's going to be losses, there's going to be arguments, but to sit here, I'll end with my favorite Jerry Brown 1.0 quote, and that's to do nothing is to do something, and we really need to move on doing something before we do nothing.
Thank you, Michael. Good quote. Kristen.
Whenever appropriate, I would like to throw in a comment in part of the discussion.
Yeah, let's get through these guys,
Okay.
and I'll come back to you guys. Kristen.
Mine can be very succinct. I can be very succinct because so much of what has been said here around the table for comments reflects the expertise that we have sitting around this table. And really what I want to say about tonight is I feel far more confident that we can get there by the dates that have been prescribed, but with two requests, through the small groups and with this group. With these types of drawings, with requesting this type of input. This is how I feel far more confident we can get this done now. I do want to say about naming that I appreciate that people who've said they don't feel strongly about this. At the Chamber and in the business, we kind of do. We really want these zones to be named. And I don't know if I like district or zone, but I love the idea of going to the public on this. And I do think it's important that it be named what we really call it. Because you know in this town, we do the opposite. We all know what we're talking about, but we don't ever say, though, except for maybe this funk zone. And the last thing on naming is, what happened to Grand Paseo? At one point, that was a choice for the central.
Fred's going to jump out of his seat.
Is that bad? I liked it. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, good, thank you. Nadra.
By thanking the architecture group that came and presented the drawings and bringing the poetry back to this conversation. Also thanking the ecological framework from CEC. A lot of the concepts in there and their framework are reflective and some of the guidelines that we are working on right now. I also, as we're going around the room, I have, similar thoughts in terms of the paseos. I think that it was great to see that the level of connectivity to State Street, and while there may be some ideas of that not necessarily being the focus that we need right now, this has been a slow process, and I think about respecting that process. And so much of, I want to say, like the first 6, maybe 7 months of this, our conversation focused 90% on mobility, on whether we're going to be open to cars and pedestrians and cyclists and how we're going to work through that. And we're still in that process. And it is somewhat circular, and that I believe that that's okay, because we're every time we get back to a certain topic, we refine just a little bit more. And so the vision that we were able to have in this meeting, it crystallized in a way that we haven't seen in some of our previous meetings. So I just say all that to say that I feel that we are on the right track, similar to Kristen's comment, and this is the time that we really start making those tough decisions. I think that we've really crystallized on the idea of what we want this vision to be, what we want the guidelines to be. Like, we're all in agreement in the and these ideas and these concepts, but now we really need to dig in to some of the other comments, Megan, Ed, and in terms of the implementation, the decisions that are going to really make this master plan. And looking over my notes, I think, I really enjoyed the trees and using the trees to create this placemaking, using it as a way to connect, using them as gateways, using them as canopies. Also, to Mike's point, one of the thoughts that I had is when expanding out those paseos, building more out into the natural spaces, urban forests, parks, being able to activate those spaces, those paseo spaces in those ways. So I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Suzanne, you have a question?
Yes, I had a question. This is to staff and the architect group. Anthony, you mentioned a couple of things in your presentation about design strategies, what you guys are working on, a toolkit, a kit of parts, and I understand we're dealing with general issues and we're trying to dive in. And then you mentioned the design process. So from this point, forward, what is that design process? What is that design process going to be? And I know that the next few months are going to be very critical, and the small groups, I think, are a great way to engage the State Street Committee. So my question is, what is this design process that you guys are going to be engaging in with staff?
So I think there's a couple of pieces, and I think to first recognize just that this is nothing. None of us are professionals at this process. This is a once in a long time kind of thing. So I think there are some bumps along the road, and there's maybe ways that things could be worked through a little better or worse. But I think all in all, it's going pretty quickly compared to a lot of master plan processes. And this actually ties to Fred's comments as well and some of his frustration. There's a couple of things happening, and as well to Ed's frustration as well, or not frustration, but desire to have HLC give commentary and Planning Commission those. I think those are going to be really valuable, and I think that the faster and better we can get input from everyone and get feedback, and let it keep informing the plan, because part of this is the first time that you saw a Santa Barbara version play out of this. And so I think it was in discussion with staff, that was part of the reason for, while Fred has all the blocks drawn to a certain level, as you also saw, a lot of it's not coordinated. So, we're working things out as we go. So you're seeing basically the process. You're seeing the sausage made. So it's not pretty in some ways, and there's bumpy in others. There is more to see, but that actually needs to be processed a little bit more, and then it could be reviewed well, in my opinion. And I think it could be reviewed now, but I think we don't have time to do everything all at once, and we certainly have been condensing down to a very extreme level. And Fred's been working at that charge the whole way, and a number of the other team members as well as we iterate. So you're seeing a sort of iteration process. Justin's sketches that he talked about in Brown, those are his initial sketches studies showing the concept, not a particular block, and just the concept of Paseo intersecting and landscape intersecting with State Street. So that was valuable, but not tied to in any of the particular blocks on State Street that actually show that. So part of it is this, it's a messy process right now. We're shredding, we're going as fast as we can and to work these things out. So I think they will be worked out more. I do think the more we can get public input, the small group input, HLC input, everyone's input, the better, because we can be reworking, and the decisions that will need to be made. So if you guys like where things are going in general, I think that you're going to be seeing options and you're going to be seeing other things. So don't worry, Fred, I promise everything will be shown at one point. They will be voting one way or the other.
Well, Anthony, I appreciate that.
I would just like to share with Susan. I've done master planning at this level before, okay? And what's going to happen next, and everything that Anthony just said is going to hold true. So we're still trying to work this out. And remember, we're all in different places. I'm working out of my house on a little 36-inch desk. These guys get to have computers and do all that kind of stuff, and it was really hard. So there's a lot of coordination, and Ed's absolutely right. It hasn't been coordinated. That's coming next. But in this process, we show you all of it. You then look at it as a committee and say, no, that's not an idea we want to even go there. That's a great idea. Can you develop that further? Mr. Jordan's comment about De La Guerra Plaza, that's already sketched. I've already got that sketch done, showing it opening up to State Street. But it may not be what you want, but you need to see it. The issues that you need to help the designers, the guys doing the pretty pictures, is exactly what Mr. Jordan said, what Peter said, et cetera. You need to decide on the mobility issue. Because right now, the drawings I've done were based on everything I've been listening to in all the meetings I've attended here, that I've listened to my colleagues in the 2020 AIA charrette, the things I've been listening, I pay attention, I listened all the time to HLC and the Planning Commission. That's what the drawings now reflect. As I said, I'm your draftsman. So some of it shows blocks with nothing on it except pedestrians. Some of it shows blocks with traffic on it. Some of it shows bikes on it. Some show bike lanes, no bike lanes. Those drawings are done. But you as a committee need to look at them and decide, yes, we can do that here. No, we can't do that there, et cetera. That's a key component. The other key component is looking at where this housing is going to get concentrated, besides Paseo Nuevo. In looking at all those parcels, all that research I did, I discovered what I thought were all kinds of separate little parcels is actually a one-person owner owns 1.5 acres in the 600 block. And it's all occupied by single-story retail buildings right now. Well, as Mr. Jordan pointed out, that we can incentivize folks to maybe, perhaps in the future, do something different on that property. That's why we need to be, in my opinion, to do a proper master plan, we need to look at both the private parcels and the public parcels. We're not going to hurt anybody's feeling. We shouldn't scare anybody. I dealt with this when I worked at San Luis Obispo on their master plan. It took them 20 years to do it, but a lot of what I put in there came to fruition. A lot of what I did didn't come there, didn't happen because of big issues. So that's what's happening next. So Susan, to answer your question, there is a process. We know how to do it. That's what we've been trained to do as architects and planners, and we're going to help you get there, and we're going to take as much as we can from the entire public and put it in here, but it's in your bailiwick to decide to accept it or not accept it. Thank you.
Anyway, there we go. No, I understand that there's a process, and I feel I think it's important. This committee, we haven't been asked to do design. We haven't been asked specific. We've had a lot of presentations from different departments of the city and about what needs to be done and this and that, and there's a lot of things to consider. And I do really think that these small groups, we can dive into details and we can have these discussions. It's really hard in a large setting like this to make a decision or to commit. So I'm looking forward to that process.
Great,
is what I'm saying.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Yes.
But John's going to go, he hasn't spoken, go ahead.
As the new kid in town, who's been looking at this from the outside and also from the perspective of the Planning Commission, first off, want to thank the architects for actually bringing forward visualizations of what this could be. And I think that's an important thing that's been missing from this process is what it could be. And I remember watching one of these meetings and Chair Davis, he said, there's no wow factor. Well, that, I think we're starting to see at least remnants of what could be a wow factor. And part of that's just the process that we're in doesn't sometimes allow us to sort of get into this stuff. You have to deal with system issues first, make those system decisions, which don't necessarily lean you to something that's graphic and something that somebody can feel and touch and relate to. So, as somebody that works in doing, basically charrette-based urbanism, unfortunately we sort of didn't do a charrette to start with, which I think we would have been better off doing that first as a community, doing a community charrette, and then breaking it down to subgroups. I found that to be the most productive thing I've done professionally is when we've done charrette-based, and it's like a couple weekends and get the whole community in. But we're not there, and so we're going to have to do this sort of in reverse, in my opinion. We basically now have to make these big decisions. There's some big decisions that are out there. The community's looking for those decisions. I don't think there's a consensus on some of those issues, but I think Megan made the comment that, it's going to be a democracy. It's going to be a majority. It probably won't be a unanimous decision. But those decisions have to be made so you can actually get to a point in which you can then do the visualization of some of these things. So we should need to get to those. I completely agree with Councilman Sneddon's comments. I just basically don't want to repeat those, but I think she's right on. And what I also see, as Michael Beckerman noted, is the population issue in housing is something that that's a good statistic. We have a situation with the population isn't there to support your downtown. And there's some real big decisions that need to be made by the community to get to those housing decisions that will support what the vision is. And the sooner that can get to the Planning Commission and the sooner we can have those policy discussions, the better. And I completely agree with Mr. Lindvik that the Commission and the HLC needs to start having conversations about what's being discussed here, so at least you get their input, instead of it coming as a document before us and it's an up and down type question. You should at least get some input early on. So those are my comments at this point.
Good, thank you.
I definitely appreciate the hard work all of you have done, because the community's really looking towards your efforts here, and I think you've done a good job considering this is not an easy thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Hillary, we're really tight. It better be good.
We keep mentioning it needs to go back to HLC, it needs to go back to Planning Commission. Yes, and that's in the path. The other thing was in a graphic many times during the beginning of this process was to go to the Transportation and Circulation Committee. Guess what they work on? The thing we talk about every meeting, and it came once. And so I think now is a good time also for this to go to that, to talk to the people who talk about this every meeting about what that could look like, and that can inform, you know, coming back to this, just like we go to HLC and all those things. So I'd really recommend that that happen soon. I know that committee, which I'm on, are like wondering and hoping to participate in some way. So I'm hoping that that's still in the plans to come soon. Again, not with a complete document, say, what do you think, but to do some of the dirty work. Yeah, thanks.
Shirley, that was really good. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to wrap up, guys, and I'm going to be really brief. I love the CEC ecological principles. Thanks, staff, for getting that incorporated. Feedback on the small groups. Yes, small groups really work for me, and I think this next phase of small groups, all these hard questions, folks, get ready, strap in, because we're heading right there really fast. Architectural group, thank you. Fred, here's something, man, I got to tell you. And I know you all that, and I'm going to take the blame. I've said, I don't want to show the public everything we got. I want to get a lot more input and basically bring back a plan. We did ask staff to basically take everything we have in here and come back in late spring, early summer, and through the small groups, work through that, including all of the individual drawings that we've got. So there is a process. Get involved, stay involved in that regard. In terms of other things I'd like to see, this all came, John, from the community charrettes. This is really where it started. Those charrettes also had at least conceptual ideas of housing, especially within airspace over public spaces. Incorporate that into the plan. Bring concepts of housing into the plan. Don't just talk numbers. Bring pictures that basically stimulate the thought in that regard. And yes, Michael, it takes 30 years to do a plan like this. And again, you know, Lee Heller and I are good friends. You start with, and I've asked staff, you start with looking at implementing it immediately. What can we do now within the next 0 to 3 years? What can we do and what happens? And then you prioritize what you need to do within the next 10 years, and then you set the framework for the longer 30-year plan, so as things go forward, you know where you're going in that regard. In 1964, they showed concept drawings like this of taking off the parking on State Street and putting it into private lots. They talked about expanding the sidewalks and narrowing, actually, starving the road diet, even back then, into 2 lanes, right? This was essentially radical at the time, as we're talking about here. But yet, in the next 20 to 30 years, it all got done, because this community can make it happen in that regard. I want to thank everybody. Your comments tonight were really fantastic. It was a good meeting. Thank you all in that regard. Architects, again, we'll keep working with you in that regard. Tess, good luck. Okay, keep us informed in that regard. Okay, we're looking forward to the new little planner coming out. Good night, everybody.